My name is Vanessa Chin, and I'm 34 years old. 2 weeks ago, I came home from a business trip to find my husband's mistress cooking in my kitchen, wearing my silk robe, while my husband explained their new arrangement. Today, they're both living in her studio apartment, drowning in legal bills, while I'm expanding my hobby business from my mortgage-free home. But let me start from the beginning. I met Christopher at a charity gala 8 years ago. He was everything I thought I wanted: Harvard MBA, investment banker at a top firm, the kind of commanding presence that made people listen when he spoke. I was fresh out of design school, working at a small firm, still figuring out who I wanted to be. "You're too talented to be working for someone else," he said on our third date. "You should start your own business." I laughed it off, but he persisted. When we got married 2 years later, he made it a condition: "I don't want my wife working for other people. Start your own design firm. I'll support you." It sounded romantic at the time. Looking back, it was the first red flag. He didn't want a successful wife. He wanted a dependent one with an acceptable hobby. I started Chin Design Innovations from our garage, focusing on eco-friendly packaging solutions. Christopher was amused by my little project, especially when I spent weekends perfecting prototypes or meeting with potential clients at farmers markets. "It's cute that you're so passionate," he'd say, patting my head like I was a child. "Just don't let it interfere with dinner parties." What Christopher didn't know was that I was good, really good. My biodegradable packaging designs caught the attention of organic food companies tired of plastic waste. Within 2 years, I had contracts with major brands, but I played it down at home, letting him believe I was making pocket money while he was the real breadwinner. "How was your craft stay?" he'd ask when I came home from signing 6-figure contracts. "Oh, just tinkering," I'd reply, filing away incorporation papers for my third subsidiary. The truth was more complex. Growing up with a mother who'd lost everything in a divorce because she'd trusted her husband too much, I'd learned to protect myself. Every major asset went through my company: the house, purchased by Chin Design as a corporate retreat; the cars, company vehicles; even our joint accounts were carefully managed. I'd deposit just enough to cover my share of expenses while keeping my real earnings in business accounts. Christopher never questioned it. He was too busy being the big-shot banker, too confident in his superiority to imagine his wife might be building an empire under his nose. He'd introduce me at parties as my wife. "She does some design work," while I smiled and networked with CEOs who were begging for my packaging solutions. The marriage started crumbling 3 years ago when Christopher made senior partner. Suddenly, he was working until midnight, taking weekend trips to close deals, and becoming increasingly critical of everything I did. "You've gained weight," he'd observe over dinner. "Maybe spend less time on your hobby and more at the gym." "The house is a mess," he'd complain about our spotless home. "What do you do all day?" I knew he was having an affair before I found proof. The cliched signs were all there: new cologne, unexplained charges, suddenly protective of his phone. But I was too busy landing a contract with a major retailer to care. Let him have his fun, I thought. I had bigger plans. Her name was Brittany, because of course it was. 24 years old, fresh from her MBA, working as an analyst at his firm. She looked like a younger version of me, if I'd been manufactured in a factory that produced Instagram influencers. I discovered their affair through sheer stupidity on Christopher's part. He used our shared iPad for a video call with her, forgetting it synced to our cloud. I watched about 30 seconds, enough to confirm what I already knew, then went back to reviewing expansion plans for our new facility. Most wives would have confronted him immediately. I started documenting everything instead. Every trip, every expense, every lie. Not for divorce proceedings, I had ironclad protection there, but for something far more satisfying. The breaking point came when I had to travel to Seattle for a major contract negotiation. It was supposed to be a day trip, but weather delayed my return flight. I texted Christopher about staying overnight, and he responded with fake concern about me being safe in a hotel alone. I caught an early morning flight and came home to find Brittany's BMW in my driveway. Walking into my own home felt surreal. Brittany's heels were by the door, designer ones I recognized from Christopher's credit card statements. Her coat was on my hook. The house smelled like the perfume I'd seen him buy for a client. I found them in the kitchen. She was at my stove, making eggs in my cast iron pan, wearing my favorite silk robe, the one Christopher had bought me in Paris. He was at the table, reading his Wall Street Journal like it was any ordinary morning. They didn't hear me come in. I stood in the doorway, studying the scene like one of my design problems. How do you repackage this situation for maximum impact? "Good morning," I said pleasantly. Christopher's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. Brittany spun around, spatula in hand, eyes wide with panic. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Christopher set down his mug with deliberate calm. Vanessa, you're home early. My meeting ended sooner than expected, I said, setting down my bags, though apparently not soon enough. Brittany started to speak, but Christopher held up a hand. The gesture was so patronizing, so typical of him, that I almost laughed. Brittany, he said, give us a moment. She scurried upstairs, to my bedroom, I noted, still wearing my robe. Christopher stood, straightening his tie like he was preparing for a board meeting. I suppose we should talk. I suppose we should, I agreed, pouring myself coffee from the pot Brittany had made. This is terrible coffee, by the way. He launched into what was clearly a prepared speech, how our marriage had been struggling, how he'd found someone who understood his ambitions, how he wanted to handle this like adults. I'm proposing a civilized arrangement, he said. Brittany and I are together now, that's not changing. You have two options: accept the situation and we can all coexist, or leave with what you came into this marriage with, nothing. Coexist? I repeated. In my house? My house, he corrected. I'm the one who pays for everything. Your little craft business couldn't cover the mortgage for a month. I sipped the terrible coffee, thinking about the $3 million I'd paid cash for this house through my company. And if I choose to leave? I asked. Then you get what you're entitled to, he said, which, given our prenup and your minimal financial contribution, is essentially nothing. I'll be generous, you can take your personal belongings and that ancient Honda you insist on driving. The Honda's reliable, I said mildly, unlike some things. He ignored the jab. Brittany's moving in either way. She's already redirected her mail here. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, but the outcome's the same. I'm keeping the house, the cars, the accounts. You can keep your hobby business. My hobby business, I repeated, savoring the words. You know what? You're right. I should pack. His eyebrows shot up. He'd expected a fight, tears, begging. You're agreeing? Why wouldn't I? I shrugged. You've made your position clear. I'll need 72 hours to arrange things. That's very mature of you, he said, suspicious but pleased. Brittany will be happy to hear you're being reasonable. Oh, I'm sure she will, I smiled. One question though, have you added her to your accounts yet? Insurance? Any of that? We're handling all that this week, he said proudly. Full financial merger. That's what real partners do. How modern, I murmured. Well, I should start packing. I went upstairs, past my bedroom where Brittany was probably hiding, and into my office. I could hear Christopher on the phone, likely bragging to his lawyer about how easy this was going to be. The next 72 hours were beautiful in their precision. First, I called my lawyer, Margaret Chen, no relation, despite the name. It's time, I said. Finally, she replied. I'll file the papers within the hour. Asset freeze? Everything in his name, I confirmed. Leave the company accounts alone, we don't want to tip them off yet. Next, I called my CFO. Begin Operation Brittany, I said. We've been planning for this possibility for months. With pleasure, she replied. How scorched do you want the earth? Visible from space, I said. Then I started packing. Not my belongings, those would come later. I packed every single piece of documentation showing that Christopher's name wasn't on anything that mattered. 3 years of financial records proving Chen Design Innovations owned every asset he thought was his. While I worked, I could hear them downstairs, planning their future. Brittany had emerged from hiding, emboldened by my apparent surrender. Their voices carried through the vents. I can't believe she just gave up, Brittany said. I thought she'd fight harder. She knows she can't win, Christopher replied. Without me, she's just another failed designer with a craft blog. Should we change the locks? Brittany asked. After she leaves, Christopher said. Let's not be cruel. The irony was delicious. On the second day, I had movers come, not for furniture, but for my office equipment. Christopher watched, smirking, as I removed computers, printers, files. Taking your craft supplies? He asked. Something like that, I replied. Brittany had fully moved in by then, her belongings mixing with mine in a way that would have been painful if I'd cared. She'd taken over my closet, my bathroom, my side of the bed. She walked around like she owned the place, which she believed she soon would. I love what you've done with the house, she told me, patronizing. When it's officially ours, I'll probably update everything. Your style is a bit dated. Design is subjective, I said pleasantly. thinking of the awards lining my actual office. On the morning of the third day, I was ready. My personal items were packed, my office cleared, everything I actually valued safely removed. Christopher and Brittany were at the kitchen table, reviewing their financial merger documents, when the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I said, knowing who it would be. A process server stood on my porch with a thick envelope. "Christopher Manning?" "That's my husband," I said helpfully. "Chris, honey, someone's here for you." He came to the door, annoyed at the interruption. The server handed him the envelope. "You've been served." Christopher's face went through several emotions as he read: confusion, disbelief, rage. "What is this?" he demanded, waving the papers at me. "Divorce papers," I said calmly, "and a cease and desist order. You're living in property owned by Chin Design Innovations. As CEO, I'm informing you that you have 24 hours to vacate the premises." "This is insane," he shouted. "This is my house." "Actually," Margaret said, appearing behind the process server, "it's a corporate asset, as is the Mercedes in the garage, the BMW MS, Hayes is driving, and approximately 94% of the assets you've been claiming as marital property." Brittany appeared, looking panicked. "What's happening?" "What's happening," I explained, "is that you're both trespassing in my company's property, the house, the cars, even most of the furniture, all purchased by Chin Design Innovations as corporate assets. Christopher's name isn't on any of it." But you're just a hobby designer," Brittany sputtered. I pulled out my phone and showed them my company's latest valuation: $8.3 million, 42 employees, contracts with 16 major retailers. "But sure, let's call it a hobby." Christopher sank into a chair, my company's chair. "Technically, the prenup protects separate assets," Margaret confirmed, "which includes MS, Chen's business holdings. You're entitled to half of the marital assets. Of course, let's see, that would be the contents of your personal checking account, your 401k, and, oh, that's it. This can't be legal," he said weakly. "Completely legal," Margaret assured him. "MS, Chen has been meticulous in maintaining corporate separation. Every major purchase went through proper channels. You've been living in corporate housing, driving company cars, enjoying the lifestyle provided by a business you dismissed as a hobby." The best part was Brittany's face as she realized what this meant for her. "But you said, you promised." "He promised you someone else's assets," I said sympathetically. "Rookie mistake. Always verify ownership before committing." "What about my job?" Christopher asked suddenly. "If this gets out?" "Oh, it's already out," I said. "Funny thing about having contracts with major retailers, they gossip. Your firm's biggest clients are already asking questions about your judgment, something about financial impropriety and ethical concerns." Within 24 hours, they were gone. Christopher tried to fight it, but his lawyer, the same one who'd been so confident about leaving me with nothing, advised him to cut his losses. The fact that he'd been living off my company's success while claiming to support me didn't look good, especially when combined with the affair. His firm put him on leave pending an investigation into whether he'd misrepresented his financial status to clients. Brittany was quietly let go. Turns out sleeping with a senior partner who's involved in a messy divorce isn't great for an analyst's career. They moved into Brittany's studio apartment, the one she'd been so eager to leave for my house. Last I heard, Christopher was working as an independent consultant, struggling to find clients who didn't know about his spectacular fall from grace. Brittany left him within 2 months, moving back to her parents' house in Ohio. I kept the house, of course, redecorated it to my taste. Turns out my style wasn't so dated after all. The master bedroom is now my design studio, filled with awards and prototypes for our latest innovations. The divorce was finalized quickly. Christopher got half of the marital assets, about $47,000 from his personal accounts. I kept my company, my real estate, my investments, and most importantly, my dignity. My favorite moment came during the final divorce proceedings. Christopher's lawyer tried one last time to claim I'd hidden assets. "Your Honor," Margaret responded, "Mr. Manning had full access to all financial records. He simply chose not to look at them. He was too busy dismissing his wife's hobby to notice she was building an empire." The judge, a woman who'd clearly seen this scenario before, smiled. "Petition denied, Mr. Manning. Perhaps next time you should pay attention to more than just your wife's weight." 6 months later, Chin Design Innovations went public. The IPO valued the company at $23 million. I celebrated by buying the building where Christopher used to work. His firm was downsizing and needed to sell. I've turned it into affordable housing for young entrepreneurs, with a design incubator on the top floor. Sometimes I think about that morning in my kitchen, Brittany making terrible coffee in my robe while Christopher explained how I'd leave with nothing. They thought they were so clever, planning their future with my assets, dismissing me as a crafter with a hobby. They learned what my mother taught me years ago: never let them see your real power until it's too late for them to take it. My name is Vanessa Chen. I'm 34 years old. I built a multi-million-dollar company while my husband thought I was playing with crafts. When he tried to replace me with a younger model, he discovered that everything he thought was his belonged to my hobby. Now I sleep soundly in my house, run my company from my office, and smile every time I think about Christopher explaining to dates why he can't afford dinner at the restaurants we used to frequent. Brittany wanted my life so badly she was willing to steal it. In the end, she got exactly what she deserved, the real Christopher, without my money to make him bearable. The best revenge isn't just taking everything, it's letting them think they've won, right until the moment they realize they've lost it all.
Sarah Martinez smoothed down her simple blue dress as she walked into the Grand Plaza Hotel, her heart beating with anticipation. Today was her daughter Emma's wedding day, and despite everything, she couldn't help but smile. The lobby gleamed with marble and crystal, exactly the kind of venue her future son-in-law's family would choose. "Mom." Emma's voice rang out across the lobby. Sarah turned to see her daughter, still in her regular clothes, hurrying toward her. "You made it." But there was something tight about Emma's smile, a tension in her shoulders that Sarah recognized all too well. "Of course I made it, sweetheart. I wouldn't miss your big day." Sarah reached out to hug her daughter, but Emma took a small step back, her eyes darting around the lobby. "Mom, I need to tell you something," Emma began, wringing her hands. "James's family, they've made some changes to the seating arrangements." Sarah's stomach tightened. She'd been expecting something like this ever since James's mother, Patricia Thompson, had taken over the wedding planning. "What kind of changes?" "They've moved you to the back table," Emma said quickly, the words tumbling out. "Near the kitchen entrance. Patricia says it's because of the photographer's setup, but..." She trailed off, unable to meet her mother's eyes. Before Sarah could respond, a sharp voice cut through their conversation. "Emma, what are you doing down here? We need you in the bridal suite immediately." Patricia Thompson strode across the lobby, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. Her eyes swept over Sarah with barely concealed disdain. "Oh, you're here." Sarah straightened her spine. "Hello, Patricia. The hotel looks lovely." Patricia's lips curved into a cold smile. "Yes, well, we wanted everything to be perfect for James and Emma." Speaking of which, she turned to Emma. "Darling, your hair appointment was scheduled for 10 minutes ago. You don't want to keep everyone waiting." Emma hesitated, looking between her mother and future mother-in-law. "Mom, I'm sorry about..." "Go on," Sarah said gently. "It's your day. Don't worry about me." As Emma hurried away, Patricia's facade dropped. "Listen," she said, her voice low and cutting. "I know Emma insisted on having you here, but let's be clear, you don't fit in with our crowd. The Thompsons have a certain reputation to maintain." Sarah kept her voice steady. "I'm here for my daughter." "Yes, and you can support her from the back of the room. We don't need your modest circumstances ruining the wedding photos. I'm sure you understand." Patricia's smile was sharp as glass. "Oh, and we've arranged for the staff meals to be served at your table." It seemed appropriate. With that, Patricia turned and walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone in the vast lobby. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of the humiliation. She thought about the extra shifts she'd picked up at the hospital, working as a nurse to help pay for Emma's education. About the nights she'd spent helping Emma study for her medical school entrance exams, proud beyond words when she'd been accepted. Now her daughter was marrying into the Thompson family, owners of the largest hospital network in the state, and suddenly Sarah's decades of hard work meant nothing. She found her way to the ballroom, where the wedding would take place in a few hours. The space was stunning. Crystal chandeliers caught the light, fresh flowers adorned every table, and a string quartet was setting up in the corner. But as she walked toward the back of the room, she saw it, her table, partially hidden behind a large pillar right next to the swinging kitchen doors. "Mrs. Martinez?" A young woman in hotel staff uniform approached her. "I'm Jenny from Event Services. We were told you'd be seated here." Sarah nodded, noticing the sympathy in Jenny's eyes. That's right. The thing is, Jenny lowered her voice, glancing around. I wanted to let you know, while the staff here, we all know who you are. My sister was at County General last year when you worked that terrible 30-hour shift during the crisis. You saved her life. Sarah blinked in surprise. She remembered that night. A massive pileup on the highway had overwhelmed the hospital. She'd stayed long past her shift, working until she could barely stand. Jenny continued, we think it's wrong how they're treating you, and we wanted you to know, if you need anything, just ask. The whole staff is on your side. For a moment, Sarah stood there, processing Jenny's words. Then she remembered something that could change everything. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Actually, she said, a small smile playing at her lips, there is something you could help me with, but first, I need to make a call. As she dialed a familiar number, Sarah watched the Thompson family sweeping through the ballroom, directing staff and making demands. Patricia was at the center of it all, gesturing dramatically about some perceived flaw in the table settings. Hello, Marcus. It's Sarah Martinez. Remember that favor you owe me? I think it's time to cash it in. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. Sarah watched from her corner as the ballroom filled with guests, all dressed in designer clothes and dripping with jewelry. She couldn't help but notice how the Thompson family greeted each arrival with elaborate embraces and air kisses, at least until they spotted her. Is that her? She overheard one woman whisper to Patricia, the mother who works as a nurse. Patricia's response was just loud enough to carry. Yes, unfortunately. But don't worry, we've managed to keep her out of sight. Can't have anything spoiling James's big day. Sarah checked her watch. Any minute now. The first sign that something was wrong came when Jenny and 3 other servers suddenly removed their uniforms, revealing street clothes underneath. They walked straight through the middle of the ballroom and toward the exit. Where are you going? Patricia called out, her voice sharp. We haven't even served the appetizers. Jenny turned, her head held high. We quit. Before Patricia could respond, more staff members began following suit. The bartenders packed up their tools. The valet parking attendants walked off their posts. Even the wedding coordinator closed her laptop and headed for the door. What is the meaning of this? Patricia's face had turned an interesting shade of red. You can't just leave. We have a contract. Actually, a deep voice said from the doorway, they can. Marcus Chen, CEO of the hotel chain, walked into the ballroom. His presence commanded immediate attention, and Sarah had to suppress a smile as she watched Patricia's expression shift from anger to confusion to desperate charm. Mr. Chen. Patricia hurried forward. There must be some mistake. We booked this venue months ago, and now your staff is following my direct orders. Marcus finished for her. He turned to address the crowded room. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but the Grand Plaza will not be able to host this event today. All staff have been instructed to cease operations immediately. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Guests began murmuring. James's father was shouting about lawyers, and Emma, poor Emma, looked like she might faint. Mom, Emma made her way through the crowd to Sarah's side. What's happening? Before Sarah could answer, Marcus spotted her and smiled warmly. Sarah, there you are. Patricia's head whipped around so fast Sarah worried she might hurt herself. You know each other. Know each other? Marcus laughed. Sarah Martinez saved my daughter's life last year. Spotted a rare condition that every other doctor had missed. Stayed with her through the night, monitoring her personally. He turned to Sarah. I told you then. Anything you need, anytime. I meant it. The pieces were starting to fall into place for the guests. Sarah could see the dawning horror on Patricia's face as she realized her mistake. But more than that, Marcus continued, his voice carrying across the now silent room. Sarah Martinez sits on the board of directors for our hospital group's charitable foundation. She's been instrumental in directing millions in funding to underprivileged communities. When she called to tell me how she was being treated at her own daughter's wedding, he shook his head. Well, let's just say the Grand Plaza doesn't associate with that kind of behavior. Emma stared at her mother, tears in her eyes. Mom, I had no idea. Why didn't you ever say anything? Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. Because I wanted you to make your own way, sweetheart. I never wanted my connections to influence your choices. She paused, looking around the room. But I also won't let anyone treat us like we're beneath them. This is ridiculous. Patricia's voice was shrill. You can't just shut down our wedding. Do you know how much we spent? Oh, I'm not shutting it down, Sarah said calmly. She nodded to Marcus, who gestured to the staff waiting by the doors. They began wheeling in new serving carts, and fresh teams of waiters entered the ballroom. I'm taking over. Patricia's mouth opened and closed soundlessly as Sarah continued. The wedding will proceed, if Emma and James still want it to, but under new management and new seating arrangements. James, who had been watching everything unfold in stunned silence, finally stepped forward. Mrs. Martinez, I'm so sorry. I had no idea my parents were treating you this way. He turned to Emma, and I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you and your mom sooner. Emma looked between her fiancé and her mother, tears streaming down her face. Mom, I'm sorry too. I should have said something. No more apologies, Sarah said firmly. This is still your day. Let's make it a good one. She turned to the gathered guests. Everyone who'd like to stay and celebrate Emma and James's wedding is welcome, as long as they understand that in this room, everyone is equal. Everyone is family. The transformation that followed was remarkable. The Thompson family, thoroughly humbled, retreated to quiet corners. The other guests, free from the atmosphere of judgment and pretense, began to relax. And Emma was glowing with pride as she looked at her mother. As the ceremony began, slightly delayed but more genuine than it would have been, Sarah took her seat in the front row. Jenny, who had changed back into her uniform along with the other staff, caught her eye and winked. Sarah smiled, thinking about how different this day had turned out from what she'd expected. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't about getting even. It was about standing up and showing your true worth. But there was still one more surprise in store for everyone. As the reception began, Sarah watched the transformed atmosphere with quiet satisfaction. The string quartet played softly in the background while guests mingled freely, the former social hierarchies forgotten in the wake of the afternoon's revelations. Patricia Thompson sat at a table near the kitchen doors, the very one she'd assigned to Sarah, looking thoroughly deflated. Her husband Richard kept checking his phone, no doubt trying to assess the social damage of the day's events. Sarah almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Mrs. Martinez? James approached her table, looking nervous but determined. Could we talk privately for a moment? Sarah nodded, following her new son-in-law to a quiet corner of the ballroom. James took a deep breath before speaking. I want you to know, he began, that I've made some decisions. I'm stepping away from my family's hospital administration position. Sarah's eyebrows rose in surprise. James, that's not necessary. It is, he insisted. I've been thinking about this for a while, actually. I went into healthcare administration because it was expected, but he straightened his shoulders. I want to go to medical school, like Emma. I want to help people directly, the way you do. A warm smile spread across Sarah's face. Emma never told me that. I never told her, James admitted. I was afraid of disappointing my parents, but after seeing you today, how you handled everything with such grace and strength, I realized I've been living my life trying to please the wrong people. Before Sarah could respond, Marcus Chen appeared at her elbow. Sarah, there's someone here who'd like to speak with you. He gestured toward the ballroom entrance, where an elegant older woman stood waiting. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she recognized Dr. Catherine Reynolds, the current health commissioner for the state. Sarah Martinez, Dr. Reynolds said warmly, approaching their group. I'm so glad I could make it, even if I am fashionably late. Patricia and Richard Thompson, who had been watching from their table, practically tripped over themselves rushing over. Commissioner Reynolds, Patricia gushed. What an unexpected honor. Save it, Patricia. The commissioner cut her off coolly. I'm here to speak with Sarah. She turned back to Sarah with a smile. The board meeting is next week, and I wanted to discuss this in person. We've reviewed your proposal for the new community health initiative, and we're not just approving it, we're doubling the funding. The Thompsons' jaws dropped in perfect synchronization. But more than that, Dr. Reynolds continued, I'm retiring next year, and the governor has been asking for recommendations for my replacement. She gave Sarah a meaningful look. I'd like to put your name forward, if you're interested. The ballroom had gone quiet again, everyone straining to hear the conversation. Sarah felt Emma's hand slip into hers. She hadn't even noticed her daughter approaching. Mom, Emma whispered. You never told me about any of this. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. I've always believed that our work should speak for itself. All those nights I was just working extra shifts. I was also building relationships, creating programs, finding ways to help more people. I never needed the recognition. I just wanted to make a difference. And that, Dr. Reynolds said firmly, is exactly why you're perfect for the position. Patricia Thompson looked like she might faint. But she's just a nurse. Just a nurse? Dr. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Thompson, just a nurse. Sarah Martinez has done more for healthcare in this state than your entire family's hospital network. While you were planning galas and worrying about social status, she was actually saving lives and changing the system from within. James stepped forward. Commissioner Reynolds, I'd actually love to hear more about the Community Health Initiative. I'm planning to apply to medical school. Patricia interrupted, her voice shrill. But you're supposed to take over the family business. No, Mother, James said firmly. I'm going to make my own way, just like Emma did, just like Mrs. Martinez taught her to do. The reception continued into the evening, but with a distinctly different tone than anyone had expected. The Thompsons retreated to their table, their social cards thoroughly played. Meanwhile, Sarah found herself surrounded by guests eager to discuss her work and vision for the future of healthcare in their state. As she watched Emma and James share their first dance, Sarah reflected on how differently this day had turned out from what she feared. She hadn't set out to humiliate the Thompsons or prove her worth. She'd simply refused to be diminished by their prejudice. Jenny appeared at her side with a glass of champagne. You know, the young server said with a grin. When my sister told me about the nurse who saved her life, she said you were some kind of angel. I think you might actually be a ninja. Sarah laughed, accepting the champagne. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about standing tall and letting your actions speak for themselves. Later that night, as the reception was winding down, Emma found her mother alone on the hotel's terrace, looking out at the city lights. Mom? Emma's voice was soft. I'm so sorry about everything. Not just today, but I've been pulling away from you, trying to fit into James's world. I forgot who I am. Who you taught me to be. Sarah turned to her daughter, seeing not the bride in her expensive gown, but the little girl who used to fall asleep reading medical textbooks because she wanted to be just like her mom. You never have to apologize for trying to find your way, Sarah said, pulling her daughter into a hug. But remember, your value isn't in who you marry or what family you join. It's in what you do, how you treat people, and the difference you make in the world. Emma wiped away a tear, careful of her makeup. I know that now, more than ever. She paused, then added with a small smile, Health Commissioner Martinez. Sarah laughed. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Why not? After today, I'd say anything is possible. As they stood there, mother and daughter looking out at the city together, Sarah felt a deep sense of peace. The Thompsons had tried to put her in her place, not realizing that she had built her own place, one of respect, dignity, and real accomplishment. The next morning, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. The staff can't stop talking about yesterday. You've become a legend at the Grand Plaza. Sarah smiled as she typed her reply. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living your truth and letting others learn from it. As she set her phone down, Sarah thought about all the paths that had led to this moment. Years of hard work, quiet dedication, and unwavering integrity had built a foundation that no amount of social snobbery could shake. The Thompsons had seen her as just a nurse, not realizing that every life she touched, every program she built, and every relationship she forged had created a legacy far more valuable than their superficial status. In the end, she hadn't needed to destroy them. She'd simply needed to stand in her own light and let the truth illuminate everything else. And as she prepared for another day at the hospital, commissioner's nomination or not, she still had patients who needed her. Sarah Martinez smiled, knowing that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving others wrong, but in proving yourself right. The crystal champagne glasses clinked as my stepmother, Diana, raised her third toast of the evening. To my darling husband's retirement, she proclaimed, her designer dress sparkling under the ballroom lights, and to selling this tired old company for something more exciting. I watched my father's face fall slightly, though he tried to hide it behind a smile. Chen Manufacturing had been his life's work, built from nothing over 30 years. Now, at his own retirement party, he was watching his trophy wife of 5 years plan its dismantling. But Diana wasn't done. Her eyes found me across the crowded room, glittering with malice. "Of course, some people thought they'd inherit this company," she said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. Poor little Alexandra, thinking Daddy would hand over a multi-million-dollar business to someone who can't even keep a relationship longer than 6 months. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Several board members shifted awkwardly, while others pretended to be fascinated by their drinks. My father just stared at his shoes, saying nothing, as usual. "It's for the best, really," Diana continued, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Running a company requires maturity, experience, a proper family image." She patted her perfectly flat stomach meaningfully, a reminder of her recent announcement that she was trying to give my father a real heir. I felt my cheeks burn, but kept my face neutral. Let her have her moment. She had no idea what was coming. "Would you like to say something, Alexandra?" Diana asked sweetly. "Perhaps congratulate your father on his retirement and his wise decision about the company's future." I stood slowly, smoothing my black blazer. At 28, I was young for a CFO, but I earned every step up the corporate ladder. Not that Diana knew that. She thought I was just another middle manager kept around out of my father's guilt after my mother's death. "Actually," I said, my voice clear and steady, "I do have something to say." Diana's smirk widened as I walked to the center of the room. She probably expected tears, pleading, maybe even a scene. Instead, I pulled out a thick envelope from my briefcase. 6 months ago, I began addressing the whole room. Chen Manufacturing underwent a quiet restructuring. The board approved it unanimously. I glanced at several board members who nodded slightly. My father transferred majority ownership to a new holding company. Diana's smirk faltered slightly. My father finally looked up, confusion crossing his face. "The holding company is called MLW Enterprises," I continued, enjoying the way Diana's perfectly made-up face scrunched in confusion. "MLW stands for Mary Louise Wong, my mother's name." Now Diana's champagne glass was shaking slightly. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. I opened the envelope and began laying out documents on the nearest table. "These papers show that I own 67% of Chen Manufacturing through MLW Enterprises. My father retains 30%, and the remaining 3% is divided among key employees." The room erupted in chaos. Diana lunged for the papers, her expensive manicure scratching at the legal documents as if she could make them disappear. "This is impossible," she shrieked. "James, tell her this is impossible." But my father was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in years. "It's all legal, Diana," he said quietly. "Alexandra earned this. She's been practically running the company for the past 2 years while I've been distracted." He looked at me apologetically. But, Diana sputtered, her face turning an alarming shade of red beneath her makeup. "We have plans. The house in the Hamptons, the yacht club membership." "About that," I said, pulling out another document. "As majority owner, I've been reviewing all company expenses, including the rather generous consulting fees being paid to your brother's fake marketing firm, and the business trips that somehow always ended up at luxury spas." Diana went pale. "You wouldn't dare." "I already have. The board has approved a full audit. The police are very interested in some of the more creative accounting you and your brother arranged." "James." Diana whirled on my father. "Are you going to let her do this to me, your wife?" My father stood straighter than I'd seen him stand since my mother died. "My late wife, Mary, helped me build this company," he said firmly. "She made me promise it would go to our daughter when the time was right. Alexandra has proven herself more than capable. And you," he shook his head sadly, "you proved yourself too, just not in the way you intended." Diana's carefully constructed world was crumbling. Her designer purse fell open as she grabbed for her phone, spilling its contents across the floor. Among them was a small USB drive that I recognized, one that had gone missing from my father's office months ago, containing proprietary company designs. "Looking for a buyer for our trade secrets?" I asked quietly, picking up the drive. "That would explain all those lunch meetings with our competitors." Diana's face contorted with rage. She raised her hand as if to slap me, but my father caught her wrist. "Security will escort you out," I said calmly. Your personal belongings will be shipped to you after they're checked for any other company property, of course. And Diana? I smiled sweetly, channeling her own fake sympathy. Don't worry about the prenup. It has a lovely clause about corporate espionage. As security led a screaming Diana away, the room buzzed with excitement. Board members came to congratulate me. Employees who'd suffered under Diana's reign looked relieved, and my father pulled me into a tight hug. I'm so sorry, Alex, he whispered. I've been such a fool. Your mother would be so proud of you. I hugged him back, breathing in the familiar scent of his aftershave. I know, Dad. I know. But our moment of reconciliation was interrupted by an urgent call. Diana's brother had been caught trying to delete files from the company servers, and something told me this was just the beginning of the storm. I touched my mother's old wedding ring, which I wore on a chain around my neck. Ready for this, Dad? He squeezed my shoulder. Lead the way, CEO. As we walked to the elevator, I could still hear Diana's shrieks from the lobby, but I wasn't worried. I'd learned from the best, my mother's business acumen, my father's innovation, and yes, even Diana's cutthroat ambition. They'd all taught me valuable lessons. Now it was time to show them exactly what those lessons had created. The morning after the retirement party, I arrived at Chen Manufacturing earlier than usual. The sun hadn't even risen, but I found my father already in his office, sorting through years of memories. Couldn't sleep either? I asked, helping him pack a framed photo of him and Mom at the company's grand opening. Been thinking about your mother, he said softly. She always said you had her business instincts. Watch out for that girl, she'd tell me. She'll outshine us both someday. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Marcus, our head of its security. Ms. Chen, we have a situation. Multiple attempts to access our servers from unauthorized locations, and you need to see this. Within minutes, I was staring at my computer screen in disbelief. Someone had leaked confidential company emails to our biggest competitors. But these weren't just any emails. They were carefully selected to make it look like Chen Manufacturing had been engaging in corporate espionage. Diana, I muttered. She's trying to trigger an industry investigation. That's not all, Marcus said grimly. She's also leaked evidence suggesting your takeover was illegal. The press is already picking up the story. Right on cue, my phone exploded with notifications. Tech Harris in hostile takeover scandal, read one headline. Family drama threatens industry giant, declared another. Dad lips stricken. Alex, I'm so sorry. If I hadn't brought Diana into our lives. No, Dad, I cut him off. This isn't your fault. But I know whose fault it is. I pressed the intercom. Janet, call an emergency board meeting. And get me Victoria Chen on the line. Your cousin the federal prosecutor? Dad asked, surprised. I smiled grimly. Diana wanted to play dirty. Time to show her what that really means. The next few hours were chaos. Diana had gone on a morning news show, playing the part of the concerned wife perfectly. I just want to protect my husband's legacy, she said tearfully. Alexandra's hostile takeover has devastated him. And now with these allegations of corporate espionage. But Diana had made one crucial mistake. In her rush to destroy me, she'd used the stolen USB drive to access company files, leaving a clear digital trail. Got her, Marcus announced triumphantly. Every unauthorized access, every leaked document, it all traces back to her brother's IP address. And he grinned. We found something else. Emails between Diana and our biggest competitor, dating back months before she married your father. The pieces clicked into place. She targeted Dad from the beginning, I realized. The whole marriage was a corporate raid. The oldest trick in the book, Dad said quietly, and I fell for it completely. Just then, my cousin Victoria called back. After hearing the situation, she was silent for a moment. You know, she said finally, we've been investigating Diana's brother's firm for months. Tax fraud, money laundering, but we could never prove where the money was coming from. This could be exactly what we need. Do it, I said firmly. The next day, as Diana was preparing for another TV interview to slander me, federal agents raided her brother's office. By evening, both siblings were in custody, and the truth was splashed across every business news channel. Corporate Rahid Daraidi, CEO's wife arrested in manufacturing espionage scandal. Family feud reveals years-long corporate conspiracy. Young CEO saves family company from hidden takeover. But the real satisfaction came when we found Diana's prenup violation clause was just the tip of the iceberg. The federal investigation revealed offshore accounts, shell companies, and a pattern of targeting wealthy business owners for marriage scams. 7 other victims, Victoria told me. All wealthy men, all with valuable companies. You and your father were supposed to be number 8. In the end, Diana and her brother faced federal charges for corporate espionage, fraud, and money laundering. The evidence was overwhelming. But before they were led away, I visited Diana in custody. How? She demanded, her designer outfit replaced by an orange jumpsuit. How did you know what I was planning? I pulled out an old photo, my mother at my age, standing proudly in front of Chen Manufacturing. Because my mother dealt with people like you all the time. She taught me to spot the vultures circling our company. That's why she made Dad promise to train me properly to protect her legacy. I leaned closer. You never had a chance, Diana. You were playing checkers. I was playing chess. 3 months later, Chen Manufacturing was stronger than ever. Our stock price had soared after the scandal, as clients appreciated how we'd handled the crisis. Dad was truly retired now, traveling the world and sending me postcards from places Mom had always wanted to visit. As for me, I hung Mom's photo in my office, the CEO's office, right next to the latest company achievement, innovation in leadership. Alexandra Chen named youngest CEO of the year. But my favorite moment came during a charity gala when I overheard 2 society women gossiping. Did you hear about James Chen's daughter? The one who exposed that gold diggers conspiracy. They say she's twice as brilliant as her mother was, and 3 times as ruthless when crossed. I smiled, touching Mom's ring around my neck. They had no idea. In business, as in life, the best revenge isn't serving it cold. It's building something so strong that no one dares to try destroying it again. Dad called that evening from Greece. Your mother would be so proud, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Not just of the company, but of who you've become. Looking out over the city from my office window, I thought about everything, the lessons, the loss, the victories. I learned from the best, I replied, both of you. After all, that's what real family legacy is about. Not the money or the company, but the strength to protect what matters, the wisdom to spot true from false, and the courage to fight for what's yours. Diana had wanted to play games with our company. Instead, she'd helped make me exactly the CEO Chen Manufacturing needed, one who could spot a threat from a mile away and handle it with the perfect mix of grace and steel, just like Mom would have done.
I find myself entangled in a rather perplexing situation as I consider approaching your father regarding a troubling incident related to a potential mugging of my own father. Indeed, suspicions have arisen concerning your father's involvement in this alleged mugging. Currently, he is situated at home. Would you be open to allowing me a brief audience with him for an inquiry? The police officer displayed a momentary sense of bewilderment in response to my request, his expression betraying a subtle confusion. Despite this, he eventually agreed, stating, "Please, let me see him." Consequently, I led the police officer into the confines of my home, unlocking the door to reveal my father's presence. Upon beholding my father, the police officer was visibly taken aback by the unexpected revelation. This incident transpired a few months ago, and as I reflect upon it, I feel compelled to share a bit more about myself. My name is David, and I am currently a 4th-year university student. Despite my aspirations to work for a prominent company, there lingers an unresolved dilemma within me. The decision revolves around whether or not to inherit my father's company. You see, my father holds the esteemed position of president at a modest factory. During my formative years, I harbored a desire to follow in my father's footsteps, aspiring to become a president like him. However, as I entered my rebellious phase, I distanced myself from this ambition, feeling a sense of embarrassment towards my father perpetually adorned in work clothes stained with oil. This sentiment persisted through my teenage years, and to some extent, endures even now. As I matured into adulthood and engaged in part-time employment, my perspective on my father began to shift. I developed a newfound respect for his tireless work ethic, which sustained not only our family but also supported numerous employees and their families. Yet despite this growing admiration, an underlying sentiment lingered. A perception that the conventional salaryman, donned in a suit and toiling diligently, possessed a certain allure absent in my father's occupation. The narrative takes an intriguing turn when, during a shopping excursion with my father, we were unexpectedly hailed from behind. Turning together, my father and I encountered Richard, a contemporary of my father's from high school. Dressed in a suit and on an external sales trip, Richard hailed from a prestigious corporation. In the course of our conversation, Richard casually inquired if my father had indeed assumed control of the family business. This revelation prompted Richard to express disdain for what he referred to as the dirty little factory managed by my father, emphasizing the incredulity that a high school graduate could rise to the position of president. Stunned by Richard's derogatory remarks, I found myself grappling with the realization that the factory in question was initiated by my grandfather, making my father the second-generation custodian of this familial legacy. I had long been aware that he had assumed control after graduating from high school. However, the revelation of a classmate mocking him caught me off guard. Richard maintained a silent smile while addressing my father. "So, did you manage to expand your father's factory? You did mention during high school that you intended to take over the company and make it bigger." To this, my father admitted, "Unfortunately, I lacked the business acumen, and that dream didn't materialize. It seemed inevitable that I excelled in practical skills but lagged behind in intellectual pursuits. Nonetheless, I felt relieved that our family didn't face financial ruin." Richard chuckled heartily, playfully slapping my father on the shoulder. "Well, David, we'll catch up at the next reunion. I've got more work to do," he added before leaving. My father looked slightly uncomfortable, prompting me to redirect the conversation. Suggesting a change of topic, my father proposed that we continue shopping. At that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that my father's work had been belittled without any response from me. The internal debate about whether to take over my father's company or pursue a career at a prestigious corporation leaned decisively toward the latter. A few weeks later, fate intervened as my father's Alumni Association event took place at the bar where I worked part-time. Despite the bustling atmosphere, I managed to serve at the table hosting my father's gathering. Fulfilling my duties silently, I approached the room where the Alumni Association was held. My father warmly greeted me, introducing me as his son to those present. Though similar in appearance, I maintained a serious demeanor, responding awkwardly to the teasing of my father's inebriated classmates. Richard, seated nearby, noticed our interaction and remarked, "We met recently too, David, right? Are you planning to take over your father's small factory?" This question added another layer to my ongoing contemplation of my professional path. When I truthfully admitted to still contemplating my decision, an unpleasant alcoholic breath emanated from Richard, leaving me repulsed. Boisterously, he exclaimed, "Stop it. Your father's company is nothing extraordinary. David should consider working for a company like mine instead of inheriting such a lackluster business." Despite his inebriated state, Richard proceeded to boast about his professional achievements, narrating a career history that began as a mere assistant but now claimed the head of accounting position. A sense of unease crept over me as I sensed discrepancies in his narrative. I sensed that something was amiss, but I chose to keep my concerns to myself, wary of potential complications that might arise from challenging him. My father, on the other hand, seemed unfazed by Richard's inebriation, and, in fact, found the situation amusing. With a lighter mood due to his own inebriation, he asked Richard about changes in his department since their last encounter a few weeks ago. Questioning the sudden shift from sales to accounting, my father caught Richard off guard. Eventually, Richard admitted to an abrupt transfer, asserting that sales wasn't his forte. However, my father pointed out the incongruity in Richard's story, revealing that the company Richard proudly spoke of had actually been absorbed by a foreign corporation, with its accounting department relocated overseas. Laughter erupted among the party attendees as Richard, now embarrassed and regretful, attempted to save face but ultimately decided to leave the gathering with heavy footsteps. Witnessing my father's ability to address the uncomfortable truth that others had noticed but hesitated to mention, I found a sense of pride in his candor, even in his intoxicated state. As half a year passed since that incident, my internal dilemma regarding whether or not to take over my father's company only intensified. The confusion deepened with each passing day, leaving me uncertain about the path I should pursue. One day, while relaxing at home, the intercom interrupted my contemplation. In the absence of my mother, I answered the door to find a visitor in uniformed clothes identifying themselves as a police officer. Surprised and apprehensive, I responded with a stiff voice, wondering if I had inadvertently committed some transgression. The police officer then brought up a purse-snatching incident, expressing a need to inquire about the matter with my father. The mention of such an incident left me puzzled, and I began to wonder about the unfolding events that seemed to add further layers of complexity to my already tumultuous life. Indeed, the enigmatic cloud of suspicion had descended upon my father, casting a shadow over our tranquil abode. The air thick with uncertainty, I found myself face to face with a stern-faced police officer bearing the weight of an accusation that seemed inconceivable. Inquiring about my father's whereabouts, the officer, with an air of professionalism, sought confirmation of his presence within our home. The exchange took an unexpected turn as the officer, grappling with the perplexity in my tone, requested to lay eyes upon my father. Navigating the corridors of my dwelling, I ushered the law enforcement representative into the sacred space of our familial sanctuary, a room adorned with a Buddhist altar and a photograph capturing the essence of my late father's spirit. In the ensuing revelation, I divulged the heartbreaking truth to the officer that my father had met an untimely demise in a tragic traffic accident. The officer, displaying empathy amid the unfolding tragedy, extended condolences for the loss. Yet my quest for justice and clarity persisted, and I sought to discern the source of this bewildering accusation that had stained my father's reputation. However, the officer, bound by the constraints of confidentiality, refrained from divulging the identity of the accuser. Apologies flowed from the lips of the officer as he departed, leaving me grappling with an unsettling sense of confusion and the nagging question of who had leveled such a grave accusation against my departed father. Days unfolded like the pages of a mystery novel, each chapter bringing a new layer of complexity to the narrative as I took on the responsibilities left in the void by my father's absence. Immersed in the daily operations of my father's factory, I witnessed my mother's valiant attempts to fill the void left by his absence. However, the weight of age limited her contributions. Amidst the mechanical symphony of the factory floor, the harmony was shattered by the sudden intrusion of Richard, a character bearing an air of accusation and vengeance. His booming voice reverberated through the cacophony, demanding restitution for a perceived transgression committed by my father. Caught in the crossfire of accusations, I attempted to reason with Richard, asserting my father's innocence in the face of the alleged purse-snatching incident. The atmosphere within the factory shifted, with the ceaseless hum of machinery giving way to hushed whispers and curious glances exchanged among the employees. Richard, however, remained resolute in his pursuit of justice, convinced of my father's guilt. His insistence echoed through the industrial expanse, causing a disturbance that transcended the confines of the factory. Frustration surged within me as I defended my father's honor, challenging Richard's assertions and questioning the veracity of his claims. As the confrontation unfolded, Richard revealed the purported timeline of the incident, fixing it 2 weeks prior. A murmur rippled through the gathered employees, their confusion palpable. My persistent queries regarding the accuracy of the timeline only fueled Richard's frustration, intensifying his vocal protestations. In the midst of the tumult, Richard's disparaging remarks about my father's workplace and colleagues added fuel to the emotional fire. Yet the gravest affront was his attempt to pin the blame for the alleged purse-snatching squarely on my deceased father's shoulders. My chest tightened with a mix of anger and sorrow as Richard persisted in his accusations, seemingly oblivious to the irrefutable truth, illuminating the fact that my father, the subject of this tumultuous ordeal, had met his end in a tragic traffic accident a month prior. The realization hung heavy in the air, a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the injustice faced even in death. Richard appeared as though he had ingested an entire pigeonhole, and with an amused expression he muttered, "Ha!" Undeterred, I pressed on, questioning the incredulous accusation he had just hurled in my father's direction. How could my father snatch purses when he passed away just 1 month ago? Perhaps there wasn't any purse snatching at all, I asserted. However, my skepticism wasn't merely based on the recent events. It was rooted in the knowledge I had gained during our class reunion. It came to light that Richard, since his school days, had been a habitual liar. This revelation occurred during the reunion, where I discovered that his dishonesty had deep roots. Moreover, it turned out that Richard had harbored a long-standing jealousy toward my father, dating back to their school days. This envy sprouted from a romantic rivalry. The girl Richard liked had chosen my father over him. This petty jealousy had fueled an unnecessary rivalry, leaving me unable to forgive Richard for attempting to tarnish my deceased father's reputation with baseless accusations. As Richard persistently asserted his unfounded claims, an interjection from another direction pierced the air. Someone emphatically shouted, "Your president wouldn't do something like that." Our president is a serious person who walks around with honesty, teaching technology, and encouraging independence. He always considers the well-being of the staff and business partners, prioritizing that over profits. The voices praising my father began to multiply, and I felt a mix of emotions, including shame for once thinking my father's work was embarrassing. Amidst the rising tide of support for my father, Richard, trembling and tearful, found himself on the receiving end of an unexpected defense of my father's character by the factory workers. It was a poignant moment that revealed my father's true standing among his peers. In the aftermath, I dealt the decisive blow to Richard by pledging to consult with the police over his false accusations against my father. Overwhelmed and unable to counter the mounting evidence, Richard raised his voice and fled the factory. True to my word, I reported Richard's false accusations to the police, supported by a recording of his statements made by a thoughtful staff member during the heated confrontation. The presence of irrefutable evidence expedited the legal process, leading to Richard's swift apprehension. His attempt to frame my father backfired, transforming his lie into a crime for which he paid a penance in jail. The relief I felt was palpable, knowing that Richard had received the comeuppance he deserved. Days later, Richard's supposed wife sought redemption and arrived at our house with a gift box, apologizing to me and my mother. She confirmed that Richard's actions were a result of the wounds he suffered at the reunion. As it turned out, Richard, once an elite employee, had been fired from his company, struggling to secure new employment. His lies about being an elite crumbled under scrutiny, especially when his inebriated confessions exposed the inconsistencies, ultimately leading to his own embarrassment and downfall. As he grappled with mounting resentment towards my father, an insidious plan began to take root in Richard's mind, a sinister plot to frame him. The sheer audacity of Richard's intention left me utterly disgusted, particularly when I learned of his preposterous rationale for resorting to lies and deceit. Interestingly, it appeared that Richard's wife shared my sentiments. She confided in me, expressing her profound disappointment in Richard's actions and revealing her intention to initiate divorce proceedings. The revelation further underscored the gravity of Richard's transgressions. Adding to the complexity of the situation was the fact that Richard, seemingly devoid of any familial ties, had no children waiting for him upon potential release from jail. This realization cast a somber light on his future prospects. Upon my graduation from college, I found myself at a pivotal juncture. The recent passing of my father weighed heavily on my mind, and I harbored concerns about the state of the company he left behind. Motivated by a dual sense of responsibility and an unshakable desire to honor the legacy of those who had supported my father during Richard's malicious lies, I made the decision to step into the role of leading the company. The decision was multifaceted. Firstly, I felt a genuine concern for the effective management of the company in the wake of my father's demise. Secondly, the impassioned voices of the staff members who had steadfastly defended my father resonated within me. Their loyalty and dedication fueled my determination to become a president who would be both loved and respected by the staff. This incident became a transformative moment for me. Armed with a degree in business administration, I recognized my ability to manage the aspects of the company that my father struggled with. However, I also acknowledged my need to learn from the dedicated staff members who possessed valuable insights into the technological facets of the business. The staff members, driven by a collective sense of loyalty and compassion, willingly imparted their knowledge to me, often emphasizing that their efforts were for the sake of my father. Their anecdotes painted a vivid picture of my father's greatness, and with each story, I grew more appreciative of the man he was. Confronted with the realization of my father's true worth, I found myself expressing remorse for not having recognized his greatness while he was alive. Speaking to his portrait after work, I couldn't help but feel a sense of shame as I looked at my oil-stained self. Yet, I began to view those stains as tangible evidence of my father's tireless work ethic. Determined to honor my father's legacy, I pledged to become a president who mirrored his virtues. I was resolute in my commitment to make his dream of expanding the town factory, a legacy passed down since my grandfather's generation, a reality. Addressing his portrait once again, this time with newfound determination, I spoke of my aspirations and felt an ethereal connection, as if my father were smiling down upon me. From that moment forward, I dedicated myself to working tirelessly, aspiring to become a president worthy of my father's legacy and realizing his dream of expanding the family's factory that had endured through generations.
I always knew this day would come. Sitting in my childhood home's formal dining room, watching my father pace near the antique sideboard, I could practically recite the lecture before it began. The emergency family meeting text had arrived yesterday, perfectly timed after my sister Olivia's partnership announcement at Morrison & Sterling, the city's most prestigious law firm. Mom had arranged everything with her usual precision. The good china gleamed, crystal glasses caught the late afternoon light, and family members were positioned like chess pieces. Dad at the head of the table, his Morgan Stanley managing director posture perfect. Mom to his right, wearing her concerned expression along with her Cartier necklace. Olivia beside her, practically glowing in her camel suit. Uncle Robert, Dad's older brother and senior partner at his own investment firm, sat across from me, already shaking his head disapprovingly. Catherine, Dad began, using my full name. Never a good sign. We've gathered everyone here because we're worried about your situation. He spat out the last word like it tasted bitter. I adjusted my simple black blazer, a deliberate choice, like everything else about my appearance today. No designer labels, minimal makeup, my Harvard MBA class ring conspicuously absent. Let them think I couldn't afford better. It made what was coming so much sweeter. Your sister made partner at 32, Dad continued, gesturing to Olivia, who managed to look both sympathetic and superior. Youngest female partner in the firm's history. While you, he waved his hand vaguely, play entrepreneur with some tech startup nobody's heard of. Mom reached for her wine glass. Darling, we just want to understand. You had such a promising career at Goldman. Vice president at 28. On track for managing director. Then you just walked away. To build apps, Uncle Robert interjected, making apps sound like a communicable disease. 3 years of watching you waste your potential. Your trust fund, which you froze, I reminded him quietly. For your own good, he thundered. Someone had to show some sense. Olivia leaned forward, all practiced courtroom concern. Kat, we know starting over is hard. But Morrison and Sterling always needs good corporate attorneys. With your background, I could probably. Still trying to save me, Liv. I kept my voice neutral, like when you told the family about my failed startup last Christmas. She had the grace to flush. That particular announcement had led to 6 months of interventions, career counselors, and not-so-subtle job listings appearing in my email. Someone had to do something, she defended. You've been working out of that tiny office downtown, driving that old car, living in that starter condo, Mom added sadly. We just want you to have the life you deserve. I checked my phone discreetly. 6:58 p.m. The Wall Street Journal article would go live in 2 minutes, right on schedule. Dad was really hitting his stride now. Your sister made partner while you play with computers. Do you know what that partnership means? 7 figures base, bonuses, corner office, real success. And what exactly do you have to show for these 3 years? Uncle Robert demanded. What does your company even do? I smiled slightly. Would you like me to explain? Please. Mom jumped in. We've been trying to understand. Actually, I said, I think the Wall Street Journal might explain it better. Mom's phone buzzed. She glanced down automatically, then froze. The color drained from her face. Margaret? Dad frowned. What is it? She turned the phone around shakily. There on the screen was the headline they'd all been too busy judging me to notice coming. QUNTUMSOAUDTIONS valued at $4 billion FTRLATEST UNDIGROUND Tech's newest unicorn revolutionizes AI security. My company's logo filled the screen. Below it, my professional headshot and the caption. Catherine Mitchell, 31, founder and CEO of Silicon Valley's most secretive success story. The room went completely silent. That's... Uncle Robert grabbed the phone. This must be a mistake. No mistake, I said calmly. Though that valuation is a bit outdated. After this morning's acquisition, we're closer to $6 billion. Olivia's perfect composure cracked. $6 billion? Would you like to know what my company actually does now? I pulled out my tablet, watching their faces as the reality slowly sank in. Or should we discuss how my playing with computers just revolutionized cybersecurity? Dad sank into his chair, face ashen. But you never said anything. I met his eyes steadily. You never asked. You were too busy planning my intervention to notice my success. Mom's phone started buzzing continuously as notifications poured in. The story was being picked up by other outlets. Soon, every financial news network would be running it. I don't understand, Olivia whispered. All this time, I confirmed. I've been building something revolutionary. That tiny office downtown is actually the smallest space in a building I own. That starter condo is the penthouse at the Morrison. And that old car is a deliberate choice, because true success doesn't need to show off. Uncle Robert was still staring at the phone, scrolling frantically. The board, the investors, include 3 Fortune 500 CEOs and the world's largest tech venture fund, I supplied. We kept things quiet while developing the technology. Security reasons, you understand. The article was detailing exactly what my company had created, an AI-driven quantum security system that made existing encryption obsolete. Every major tech company, government agency, and financial institution would need our technology. and I owned 51% of the company. Dad looked like he'd been punched. Why didn't you tell us? I stood up, smoothing my simple blazer. Because sometimes the best success comes when people underestimate you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a video interview with Bloomberg in an hour. They're doing a special on disruptive tech leaders. As I headed for the door, Mom found her voice. Catherine, wait, please. I turned back. Oh, and Liv? Congratulations on making partner. 7 figures is impressive. I smiled. Let me know when you're ready to discuss real numbers. The last thing I saw as I left was Olivia's face as she did the math on my net worth compared to her partnership compensation. Some victories don't need words. Outside, a sleek black car waited to take me to the studio. My phone buzzed with a message from my COO. Stocks up 30% pre-market in Asia. Ready to change the world. I smiled, thinking of the shocked faces I'd left behind. Always ready. After all, success is the best revenge, especially when nobody sees it coming. The Bloomberg studio lights were harsh, but I remained perfectly composed. The host, Michael Jensen, leaned forward with practiced intensity. So, Catherine Mitchell, the tech world's newest billionaire. Or should I say, its best kept secret. How does someone build a $6 billion company without anyone noticing? I smiled, knowing my family was probably watching. Success doesn't need an audience, Michael. It needs focus. The interview was going live across global markets. Asian trading had already responded. Our stock was up 40% and climbing. But that wasn't what made me check my phone during the commercial break. The messages had started pouring in. Dad, Catherine, we need to talk. Please. Mom, darling, I've had calls from every charity board in the city. Olivia, the managing partners want to meet you. Please call me. Uncle Robert, my investment committee is asking questions. We should discuss. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the message from Marcus, my COO. Goldman Sachs called. They want to schedule a meeting. I smiled, remembering my old corner office there. The one I'd foolishly walked away from 3 years ago. The same Goldman Sachs that had declined to invest in our first funding round. We're back in 30 seconds, the producer announced. Ms. Mitchell, Michael said as we returned to air. Your quantum encryption technology is being called revolutionary. Every major tech company will need to adapt. How does it feel to disrupt an entire industry? It feels like validation. I replied, thinking of all those family dinners where they dismissed my work. But this is just the beginning. After the interview, my phone showed 147 missed calls. The top tech news sites were running with the story. Stealth startup becomes Valley's hottest company overnight. Catherine Mitchell, the billionaire nobody saw coming. Quantum Solutions, how one woman revolutionized cybersecurity. My executive assistant, Sarah, met me at the elevator of our headquarters. Your sister's been in the lobby for 2 hours. Of course she has. I checked the security feed on my phone. Olivia sat in her perfect channel suit, looking increasingly less perfect as time passed. Let her wait. My office occupied the top floor of the building, the one my family thought was just a small rental space. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city skyline, including the Morrison and Sterling building where Olivia had just made partner. The Goldman Sachs team will be here at 2, Sarah reported. And the Times wants an exclusive on your journey from Goldman DP to tech CEO. Schedule the Times for next week. I sat at my desk, studying the latest market reports. Let's make Goldman sweat a little first. A soft knock interrupted. Marcus entered, tablet in hand. You might want to see this. He pulled up a LinkedIn post from Olivia. So proud of my brilliant sister, Catherine Mitchell, CEO of Quantum Solutions. Always knew she would change the world. Hashtag proud sister, hashtag woman in tech, hashtag family first. Interesting, I said. Considering last week she told our cousins I was wasting my potential. Your uncle's firm also released a statement claiming they were early supporters of your vision. I laughed. The same uncle who froze my trust fund to teach me responsibility. Marcus grinned. Want to show them what real support looks like? I pulled up our investor dashboard. Released the Series B details. Let everyone see who really believed in us. The list was impressive. 3 of the world's top venture capital firms, 2 tech giants, and a handful of strategic investors. Notably absent, Uncle Robert's prestigious investment firm. Also, Marcus added, Morrison and Sterling's managing partner called. They want to pitch for our legal business. Olivia's firm. I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, they suggested her as lead counsel. Said she'd give us the family discount. I shook my head. Schedule meetings with their top 3 competitors instead. Let's see how that partnership feels when she loses the year's biggest potential client. Sarah appeared in the doorway. Your sister's still downstairs, and your parents just arrived. I checked the lobby feed. Mom clutched her Hermes bag like armor. Dad looked uncomfortable in the modern space, so different from his wood-paneled bank office. Your call, Marcus said quietly, but the press will notice if the CEO's family isn't allowed upstairs. He was right. Image mattered now. I pressed the intercom. Send them up. But first, I turned to Sarah. Bring me the Goldman Sachs rejection letter from our first funding round, and Uncle Robert's trust fund freeze notification. Planning something? Marcus asked. Just gathering receipts. I straightened my simple blazer, the same one they'd probably assumed I couldn't afford better than. Success is best served with documentation. The elevator dinged. Olivia entered first, attempting to regain her courtroom confidence. Mom and Dad followed, taking in the sleek office with wide eyes. Catherine, Mom started. Why didn't you tell us? About what? I kept my voice neutral. The company valuation? The technological breakthrough? Or how about the fact that I bought the Morrison building last year? Olivia's head snapped up. You own my firm's building? Along with half the block, I smiled. Being a landlord is just a hobby, though. Like playing with computers. Dad stepped forward. Sweetheart, we were wrong. We should have supported. Should have. I cut him off. Like when you supported Olivia's career. Funded her law school. Celebrated every promotion. I pulled out the trust fund freeze notification. Or like when Uncle Robert decided I needed to learn responsibility. Mom sank into a chair. We thought. You thought you knew better. I stood, walking to the window. You thought success only looked one way. Corner offices, law firms, investment banks. I turned back to face them. Want to know what real success looks like? I pressed a button, and the glass wall behind my desk turned transparent, revealing a massive workspace filled with engineers, developers, and researchers. That's what $6 billion of success looks like. 200 brilliant minds creating the future of cybersecurity. And not one of them cared what car I drove or where I lived. They cared about the vision. Olivia found her voice. The partners wanted me to discuss our firm's services, already scheduled meetings with your competitors. I watched her face fall. Might affect those partnership bonuses, I imagine. But we're family, she protested. Family? I picked up the Goldman Sachs rejection letter. Family would have asked what I was building, would have believed in me without needing the Wall Street Journal's validation. Dad stepped forward. We can fix this. Start over. Fix what? I raised an eyebrow. My successful company? My majority ownership? Or the fact that your failing daughter now has more net worth than your entire family combined? The silence was heady. Now, I checked my watch. I have a meeting with Goldman Sachs. Apparently, they're very interested in working with us now. Catherine, please. Mom tried one last time. Come to dinner. Let us make this right. I looked at them. Really looked at them. Mom's practiced polish showing cracks. Dad's authority deflated. Olivia's perfect world shaken. I have a better idea, I said finally. Next week, I'm speaking at the World Tech Summit. Thousands of attendees, global media coverage. You're welcome to watch, from the audience. They got the message. Success had changed everything, including who now held the power to extend or withhold invitations. As they left, Marcus returned with more updates. Our stock was still climbing. Interview requests were flooding in. The biggest names in tech wanted meetings. Ready for the Goldman pitch? He asked. I smiled, thinking of my old boss who'd questioned my decision to leave. Oh yes, let's show them what they missed out on. Because success isn't just about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And I was just getting started. The World Tech Summit main stage was everything I'd imagined during those long nights coding in my tiny office. 20-foot screens displayed the Quantum Solutions logo. 5,000 attendees filled the convention center's grand hall. Every major tech publication had front row seats. From the green room, I watched my family file in. 4th row, center section. Mom in channel, Dad in his power suit, Olivia looking uncomfortable without her usual authority. Uncle Robert had somehow secured a seat, despite not being on the guest list. Typical. 2 minutes, Ms. Mitchell, the stage manager announced. I checked my reflection. Simple black dress, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back neatly. Not the family's usual definition of success, but perfectly suited for a tech CEO worth billions. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Stock hit $450. Up 180% since WSJ article. Ready to shock them again? I smiled. They had no idea what was coming. The introducer's voice boomed through the speakers. Please welcome the founder and CEO of Quantum Solutions, Catherine Mitchell. The applause was thunderous. I walked out, command and confidence in every step. The screens behind me lit up with our latest technology demonstration. 3 years ago, I left a prestigious banking career to pursue what my family called a dream. Today, that dream is valued at $8 billion. I saw Dad flinch at the number, higher than what they'd read in the press. But this isn't a story about money. It's about vision. While others saw encryption as a wall, we saw it as a door, a quantum door. The screens displayed our technology in action. The audience gasped as we demonstrated how traditional security systems fell before conventional attacks, while our quantum shield remained impenetrable. This morning, I continued, I'm pleased to announce that Quantum Solutions has been selected by the Department of Defense for a $12 billion security infrastructure contract. The room erupted. Photographers' flashes lit up like lightning. In the 4th row, Mom grabbed Dad's arm. Olivia's jaw dropped. Additionally, I smiled, knowing this would hit home. We've acquired Morrison Digital Securities. Olivia's head snapped up. Her law firm's biggest client, gone in one sentence. But perhaps most significantly, I paused, savoring the moment. We've established the Mitchell Innovation Foundation with a $500 million endowment to support young entrepreneurs who, like me, have a vision others might not understand. The screens show the foundation's first initiative: full scholarships for women in tech, specifically those who'd been told they couldn't succeed. As I outlined our plans for global expansion, I watched my family's reactions. Dad's proud smile, too late to claim cred. Mom's tears, realizing what she'd missed. Olivia's rapid texting, probably to her panicking law partners. After the presentation, the press swarmed. Ms. Mitchell, how does it feel to be called the next Steve Jobs? Is it true you're now the youngest self-made female billionaire in tech? Any response to rumors about a potential Goldman Sachs merger? I handled each question with practiced ease, watching my family hover at the edges of the crowd. They'd have to wait, just like everyone else. Hours later, in my office, Sarah brought in the afternoon's headlines. Quantum Solutions lands historic defense contract. Catherine Mitchell, the woman who revolutionized security, tech's new queen. How one CEO changed the game. Your family's still in the building, she reported. Your sisters tried to get past security 3 times. I walked to the window, looking out at the city I now partially owned. Send them up. It's time. They entered like chastened children, not the power players they'd been just days ago. That was, Dad started. Revolutionary? I supplied. World-changing? Or just playing with computers? Mom stepped forward. We were wrong, Catherine. So wrong. Yes, I agreed simply. You were. The foundation, Olivia said. That's impressive. It's necessary, I corrected, so other women don't hear no from the people who should support them most. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. About the trust fund. Is still frozen. I cut him off. And will remain so. I'm doing quite well without it. Catherine, Dad tried again. We want to be part of this, part of your success. I turned to face them fully. My success happened without you, happened despite you. The time to be part of it was 3 years ago, when I needed support, not now, when I've proven everyone wrong. Then why let us come today? Olivia asked quietly. Because success isn't about revenge, I said. It's about growth. You needed to see that the daughter you dismissed changed the world. The sister you pitied now owns your firm's building. The niece you tried to control built an empire. I pressed a button, and the office windows turned transparent, revealing the full scale of our operations. Hundreds of employees, millions in equipment, the future being built in real time. This is what believing in yourself looks like, I said. This is what happens when you don't let others define your worth. Mom was crying openly now. Please, give us a chance to make it right. I smiled softly. You already did. Your doubt made me stronger. Your dismissal made me determined. Your lack of faith made me unstoppable. And now? Dad asked. Now? I checked my phone as another alert came in. Now I have a company to run, an industry to revolutionize, and a generation of entrepreneurs to support. You're welcome to watch, from whatever distance you earn. They left quietly, understanding finally that the power dynamic had shifted permanently. Success had transformed their dutiful daughter into someone they barely recognized, a leader, a visionary, a force. Later that night, alone in my office, Marcus brought in the final market report. Stock closed at $500. Market cap now over $10 billion. Send the numbers to the board, I said. And Marcus? Schedule the meeting with Goldman Sachs. Let's show them what they missed. They'll try to buy their way in now, he warned. Let them try. I smiled, thinking of all those doubting voices now turned to praise. Success isn't about who joins you at the finish line. It's about who believed in you at the start. My phone buzzed with another family message. I ignored it, focusing instead on the foundation proposals. Somewhere out there, another woman was being told she couldn't succeed, couldn't innovate, couldn't lead. I would make sure she could. Because true success isn't measured in billions or headlines or vindication. It's measured in impact, in change, in showing others what's possible when you refuse to let anyone else write your story. And my story? It was just beginning. The day Aunt Eleanor died, I was elbow-deep in garden soil, planting the heirloom roses she'd given me for my birthday. My phone buzzed 3 times before I finally pulled off my gloves to answer it. Miss Blackwood? A formal voice I didn't recognize. This is James Morton, your Aunt Eleanor's attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. My heart stopped. The roses suddenly felt heavy in my hands. Eleanor's last gift to me. What happened? Your aunt passed away in her sleep last night. He hesitated. She left explicit instructions for me to contact you first, before anyone else in the family. I sank to my knees in the dirt, barely registering his words. Aunt Eleanor, the woman who taught me to read, who'd snuck me chocolate chip cookies during dreary family functions, who'd supported every dream I'd ever had, was gone. Miss Blackwood, are you there? Yes, I managed. I'm here. What? What do you need me to do? Your aunt left specific instructions about her funeral arrangements. And another pause. She left you a letter that must be opened before the service. Would you be able to come to my office today? I looked down at the roses. Queen Elizabeth variety, Eleanor's favorite. She'd handed them to me just 2 weeks ago, her eyes twinkling with her usual mischief. These have been in my family for generations, she'd said, just like secrets. At the time, I'd thought it was just another of her cryptic comments. Now, I wasn't so sure. I'll be there in an hour, I told the lawyer. James Morton's office was exactly what you'd expect from someone who handled old money. All dark wood and leather-bound books, with a view of the city skyline that probably cost more than my yearly salary. He stood as I entered, offering a sympathetic smile. Miss Blackwood, thank you for coming so quickly. Please, have a seat. I sat in one of the plush leather chairs, trying not to fit it. Mr. Morton, what's this about? Why did Aunt Eleanor want you to contact me first? He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out 2 envelopes. One was thick, official-looking, with the law firm's letterhead. The other was smaller, cream-colored, with my name written in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. Your aunt was an unusual woman, Morton said carefully. Brilliant in business, but also quite particular about how things should be done. She left very specific instructions about her will and her funeral arrangements. That sounds like Eleanor, I said softly. He slid the cream envelope across the desk. She wanted you to read this privately. Then we can discuss the rest. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the envelope. Eleanor's distinctive perfume, roses and vanilla, still clung to the paper. I opened it carefully, pulling out a single sheet of her personal stationery. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, I've finally run out of time. Don't be sad. I've lived exactly the life I wanted, which is more than most people can say. But I need one last favor from you, my darling niece. At my funeral, you'll need to read a letter. One that will change our family forever. You'll find it in the hidden compartment of my jewelry box, the one I showed you how to open when you were 12. Remember the trick with the rose carving? Some people might call this revenge, but I prefer to think of it as justice. Long delayed, perhaps, but justice nonetheless. The truth is, I've left everything to you. Montgomery Industries, my personal assets, all of it. But there's one condition. You must read that letter at my funeral with the entire family present. No exceptions. I know this is a lot to ask, especially now. But you've always been the strong one, Olivia. The honest one. That's why it has to be you. All my love, Aunt Eleanor. P.S. Don't let them bury me in anything beige. You know how I feel about beige. I read the letter twice, then looked up at Morton. She left everything to me. He nodded, opening the official envelope. Montgomery Industries, her personal estate, investment portfolios, approximately $89 million in total assets. But as she mentioned, it's conditional on you fulfilling her final request. My head spun. Eleanor had always been generous with me, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. What about the rest of the family? My father, my cousins? There are some small bequests, but the bulk of the estate is yours, assuming, of course, you agree to her terms. I thought about my father, who'd always resented his younger sister's success. About my cousins, who'd spent years sucking up to Eleanor, hoping to inherit her fortune. About all the family gatherings where Eleanor had sat quietly, watching everyone with those knowing eyes of hers, like she was waiting for something. When is the funeral? I asked. 3 days from now. Your aunt was very specific about the arrangements. The service will be held at St. Michael's Cathedral, followed by a reception at her estate. The entire family is expected to attend. I stood up, clutching Eleanor's letter. Then I should go. I have a jewelry box to find. Morton called after me as I reached the door. Miss Blackwood? One more thing. Your aunt asked me to tell you. She said you'll know what to do with the truth. The drive to Eleanor's estate took 40 minutes, but it felt like hours. My mind raced with questions. What was it in that second letter? What secret was so important that Eleanor would make it a condition of her will? The gates opened automatically as I approached. Eleanor had given me the access code years ago, saying she trusted me more than her security system. The house was exactly as I remembered. A sprawling Victorian mansion set amid perfectly manicured gardens, with Eleanor's beloved roses climbing every available surface. Mrs. Peters, the housekeeper, met me at the door. Her eyes were red from crying. "Oh, Miss Olivia, I'm so glad you're here. She left instructions that you were to have full access to her rooms." "Thank you, Mrs. Peters. I won't be long." Eleanor's bedroom was on the second floor, overlooking her prize, rose garden. Like everything else about my aunt, it was elegant but full of hidden whimsy. Silk curtains in bright patterns, modern art next to family portraits, and everywhere, touches of her beloved roses. The jewelry box sat on her dresser, exactly where it had always been. Beautiful Brazilian rosewood, carved with intricate floral patterns. I ran my fingers along the edge until I found it. The small rose carving that concealed the release for the hidden compartment. "Third petal from the left," I whispered. Remembering Eleanor's instructions from all those years ago, there was a soft click, and a panel in the bottom slid open. Inside was another envelope, sealed with wax and marked to be read at my funeral. My hand shook as I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected, and I could feel what seemed like photographs inside. For a moment, I was tempted to open it right there. But I knew Eleanor. Everything she did had a purpose. If she wanted this revealed at her funeral, in front of the whole family, she must have had her reasons. I slipped the envelope into my bag and took one last look around the room. On the bedside table was a framed photo I'd never seen before. Eleanor as a young woman, standing in front of Montgomery Industries' first office. She was smiling that knowing smile of hers, the one that always made me feel like she could see right through people's pretenses. "What did you know, Aunt Eleanor?" I whispered to the photograph. What secret was worth waiting a lifetime to reveal? The next 3 days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements and family drama. My father called 6 times, alternating between concern about my involvement in the arrangements and barely concealed anxiety about the will. My cousins sent a barrage of text messages, each one more transparently self-interested than the last. Through it all, I kept Eleanor's sealed envelope close. At night, I'd take it out and look at it, wondering what revelations it contained. What truth was so important that Eleanor would stake her entire legacy on its revelation? The morning of the funeral dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a deep blue suit, Eleanor's favorite color, and pinned one of her prized roses to my lapel. The envelope felt heavy in my bag, like it was weighted with more than just paper and photographs. St. Michael's Cathedral was packed by the time I arrived. The Montgomerys were old money, and Eleanor had been a prominent figure in both business and philanthropy. The pews were filled with a mix of family, business associates, and city officials. My father intercepted me as soon as I entered, his face tight with anxiety. "Olivia, we need to talk about the will. Morton won't tell us anything. Says we have to wait until after the service." "What's going on?" I met his eyes steadily. "We'll all find out together, Dad. That's what Aunt Eleanor wanted." He grabbed my arm as I tried to pass. "Olivia, if you know something." "Let go, Dad," I said quietly, but firmly. "This is Eleanor's funeral. Show some respect." The service itself was beautiful, exactly as Eleanor would have wanted it. No beige in sight. The flowers were all roses in deep reds and vibrant pinks, her favorite colors. The minister spoke about her generosity, her intelligence, her dedication to making the world better. Finally, it was time. Morton caught my eye from the front pew and gave a slight nod. My hands trembled slightly as I walked to the podium, Eleanor's envelope clutched in my hands. The cathedral fell silent as I faced the congregation. My father sat in the front row, his face a mask of barely controlled anxiety. Next to him, my cousins John and Rebecca leaned forward eagerly, like vultures awaiting their next meal. I took a deep breath, breathing in the scent of roses that filled the air. In that moment, I could almost feel Eleanor standing beside me, giving me strength. Before she died, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. My Aunt Eleanor left me a letter with specific instructions. She wanted it read here today, in front of everyone who knew her. I broke the wax seal slowly, aware of hundreds of eyes watching my every move. Inside were several sheets of paper, and as I'd suspected, photographs. As I pulled them out, I heard my father make a strangled sound from the front pew. The first photograph showed a young Eleanor standing next to a man I didn't recognize. They were both smiling, holding up what looked like blueprints. The second photo showed the same man at what appeared to be a construction site, with the early foundations of what I now recognized as Montgomery Industries' first building. My name was Eleanor Montgomery. I read from the letter. And this is the truth about how Montgomery Industries began. My hands were steady as I began reading Eleanor's letter, my voice carrying clearly through the hushed cathedral. My name was Eleanor Montgomery, and this is the truth about how Montgomery Industries began. The man in these photographs is Harold Bennett, a brilliant engineer and my business partner in 1975. He was also the true founder of what would become Montgomery Industries. A murmur rippled through the congregation. In the front row, my father's face had gone completely white. Harold and I met at university. I continued reading. We shared a vision of creating sustainable building materials that would revolutionize the construction industry. Harold had the technical genius, and I had the business acumen. Together, we created the foundation of what Montgomery Industries would become. I pulled out another photograph, this one showing Eleanor and Harold shaking hands over what appeared to be a contract. We were equal partners, splitting everything 50-50. The patents, the company, the profits, all of it was shared between us. Until the night of October 15, 1976. When Harold died in what was reported as a car accident. My father started to stand, but my Uncle James pulled him back down. I kept reading. But it wasn't an accident. The brake lines in Harold's car had been cut. I discovered this too late, after the police had already closed the case. I also discovered something else. Papers had been filed just hours before Harold's death, transferring his entire share of the company to the Montgomery Family Trust. Papers that bore his signature. I looked up, meeting my father's eyes directly. A signature that I now know was forged by his business partner at the time, my own brother, Richard Montgomery. The cathedral erupted in gasps and whispers. My father stood up, his face contorted with rage. "Stop this immediately," he shouted. "This is slander." "No, Dad," I said calmly. "This is truth. Aunt Eleanor left proof." I held up a stack of documents from the envelope. The original contract between Eleanor and Harold. Forensic analysis of the forged documents. Police reports that were buried. Bank transfers. She kept everything. Why? The question came from my cousin John, who was staring at his uncle, my father, with dawning horror. Why reveal this now? I turned back to Eleanor's letter. I'm revealing this now because I've spent 45 years building this company into something Harold would have been proud of. I've used our success to fund research, to support sustainable development, to create opportunities for brilliant minds like his. But I've also spent 45 years watching my brother profit from his crime, watching him raise his children to believe that privilege and power put them above the law. My father had sunk back into his pew, all the fight gone out of him. I continued reading. The truth is, I should have come forward years ago. But by the time I had gathered all the evidence, the company was employing thousands of people. Going public would have destroyed not just Richard, but countless innocent families who depended on Montgomery Industries for their livelihood. So I made a different choice. I decided to wait, to build, to make sure that when the truth finally came out, the company would survive it. I pulled out one final document from the envelope, a yellowed envelope addressed to Harold Bennett's only surviving relative, his daughter Sarah. Which brings me to my final confession. Over the years, I've kept track of Harold's daughter. I've anonymously funded her education, her research, her work in sustainable engineering. I've watched her grow into the kind of brilliant, ethical scientist her father was. Sarah Bennett now runs one of the most innovative green technology firms in the country, though she's never known who was backing her. More guests filled the cathedral as a woman stood up from the middle pews. She was about my age, with Harold's dark eyes and determined expression. Eleanor had arranged everything, even ensuring Sarah Bennett would be here for this moment. The second part of my will, I read, my voice growing stronger, leads a 30% share of Montgomery Industries to Sarah Bennett as partial restitution for what was stolen from her father. The controlling interest goes to my niece Olivia, the only member of the Montgomery family who has shown the same commitment to ethics and innovation that Harold and I once shared. I looked up at the stunned faces before me. The letter is signed, Eleanor Montgomery, co-founder of Montgomery Industries and keeper of its greatest shame. The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly, Sarah Bennett began walking toward the front of the cathedral. She stopped in front of my father, who seemed to have aged decades in the past few minutes. All these years, Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly, I thought my father was a failure who abandoned his work. I never knew, never imagined. Miss Bennett, I said, stepping down from the podium, I'm so sorry for what was taken from you. She turned to me, tears in her eyes. Thank you for having the courage to read that letter. Your aunt? She was watching over me my whole life, wasn't she? She was trying to make things right, I said softly, in her own way. The next few hours passed in a blur. The reception was unsurprisingly tense, with family members splitting into factions. Those who demanded the letter be suppressed, those who insisted on going to the police, and those who simply sat in stunned silence. My father disappeared immediately after the service. I wouldn't hear from him for weeks, not until he checked himself into a rehabilitation facility, finally facing the guilt he carried for 45 years. In the months that followed, the truth about Montgomery Industries' founding became public knowledge. But Eleanor had been right. The company was strong enough to survive it. With Sarah Bennett's technical expertise and my commitment to Eleanor's vision, we began a new chapter in the company's history. 1 year after the funeral, I stood in Eleanor's rose garden, now blooming more beautifully than ever. Sarah had joined me for what had become our weekly meeting, where we discussed everything from company strategy to our shared love of sustainable innovation. You know what's strange? Sarah said, gently touching one of Eleanor's prized Queen Elizabeth roses. I always felt like someone was looking out for me, guiding my career from afar. I used to think it was my father's spirit. Now I know it was Eleanor. She tried to protect everyone, I said. The company, its employees, you, even my father in her own way. She just couldn't let the truth die with her. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Do you think she made the right choice, waiting all those years? I considered the question carefully. I think she did the best she could with an impossible situation. She turned a company built on fraud into a force for good. She made sure you were taken care of. And in the end, she made sure the truth came out on her terms. And what about you? Sarah asked. Do you ever regret being the one who had to reveal it all? I looked out over the rose garden, remembering Eleanor's knowing smile, her cryptic comments, her quiet strength. No, I said finally. Eleanor chose me because she knew I could handle it. She knew I'd understand that sometimes doing the right thing means facing uncomfortable truths. She would be proud of what we've built, Sarah said, gesturing toward the Montgomery Industries building visible in the distance. A real partnership, just like she and my father intended. I smiled, touching one of the roses Eleanor had given me, now blooming in her garden. She once told me these roses had been in her family for generations, just like secrets. But maybe it's time for new traditions. Truth instead of secrets. Partnership instead of power. Building something together instead of taking from each other. Sarah squeezed my hand. I think both our fathers would like that. That evening, as I sat in Eleanor's study, now my study, going over company reports, I found a small note tucked into her old desk calendar. It was dated the day she died, written in her elegant hand. Dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, you've done what I asked. You've faced the truth and handled it with grace. That's why I chose you, not just to inherit the company, but to make it better than it was, to make it what Harold and I dreamed it could be. The roses in the garden will bloom again next spring. When they do, remember that beauty can grow from even the darkest soil, if we have the courage to plant it. All my love, Eleanor. I placed the note carefully in my drawer and looked out at the garden, where the setting sun painted the roses in shades of gold. Eleanor had left me more than just a company. She'd left me a chance to right an old wrong, to build something meaningful, to prove that it's never too late for truth to bloom. Tomorrow, there would be meetings and decisions and all the responsibilities that came with running a multi-million-dollar company. But for now, I sat in the quiet of Eleanor's study, surrounded by the scent of roses, knowing that sometimes the heaviest inheritances aren't measured in money, but in the weight of the truths we choose to carry. And like Eleanor, I would carry this truth with grace, using it not to destroy, but to build, not to punish, but to heal, creating something beautiful from the soil of the past. After all, that's what Eleanor had done. That's what she had trained me to do. And somewhere, I knew, she was watching with that knowing smile of hers, proud that her final secret had finally found its way into the light.
Growing up as Victoria Hamilton's daughter wasn't easy. Every breath I took, every step I made, was carefully monitored and judged. My father, the CEO of Hamilton Industries, had my entire life planned out before I could even walk. Charlotte, darling, he'd say, adjusting his perfectly pressed Armani suit, a Hamilton never settles for second best. Our mansion in Beverly Hills stood as a testament to that philosophy. 28 rooms of carefully curated luxury, each one screaming wealth and power. But to me, it felt more like a golden cage than a home. By the time I turned 25, I had followed my father's blueprint perfectly. Harvard Business School graduate, junior executive at Hamilton Industries, and engaged to Bradley Winchester ILI. Heir to Winchester Technologies and my father's handpicked choice for my husband. There was just one small problem. I was desperately, hopelessly in love with someone else. I met James Mitchell on a rainy Tuesday morning when my Ferrari broke down on the way to work. He was the mechanic who came to my rescue, arriving in a beaten-up tow truck with a smile that made my heart skip a beat. "Looks like your timing belt's shot," he said, wiping his hands on his worn jeans. "I can fix it, but it'll take a few hours." Something about his honest brown eyes and the way he explained everything without talking down to me made me agree to wait at his small garage instead of calling in Uber. That decision changed my life forever. Over cups of terrible vending machine coffee, I discovered James wasn't just any mechanic. He'd worked his way through engineering school, graduating top of his class. He could have taken a cushy corporate job, but he loved working with his hands, solving problems, making things better. "Life's too short to spend it doing something just because it looks good on paper," he told me, his eyes twinkling. Those words hit me like a thunderbolt. For the first time, someone had put into words exactly what I'd been feeling all my life. One coffee led to another, then dinner, then stolen moments whenever I could escape my suffocating world. James never asked about my family's wealth, never tried to impress me with fancy restaurants or expensive gifts. Instead, he showed me the joy of simple things, midnight drives along the coast, picnics in hidden parks, and laughter. So much laughter. For 6 months, I lived a double life. Society princess by day, myself by night. but I knew it couldn't last forever. The breaking point came during a charity gala at our mansion. Bradley was droning on about merger strategies to anyone who would listen, while my mother paraded me around like a prized thoroughbred. Charlotte will be taking over the East Coast operations after the wedding, she'd announced to yet another group of socialites. The Winchesters and Hamiltons. Imagine the possibilities. I felt like I was suffocating. Excusing myself, I fled to the garden, my trembling fingers already dialing James's number. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered into the phone, tears streaming down my face. "I can't marry Bradley. I can't be who they want me to be." James was silent for a moment before speaking. "Then don't be. Be who you are, Charlotte. That's the person I fell in love with." That night changed everything. The next morning, I walked into my father's study, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. "Daddy, I need to tell you something." My voice shook slightly. "I can't marry Bradley. I'm in love with someone else." The explosion that followed was nuclear. My father's face turned purple as I explained about James, about wanting a different life than the one he planned. "A mechanic?" he roared, his fist slamming onto his mahogany desk. "My daughter, a Hamilton, in love with a grease monkey. He's an engineer, Daddy, and he's brilliant. If you just meet him." "Absolutely not." My father's voice could have shattered glass. "You will marry Bradley as planned, or you can forget about your trust fund, your position at the company, everything. Is that clear?" I stood up straighter, channeling strength I didn't know I had. "Crystal clear, Daddy. Goodbye." Walking out of that study was the hardest thing I'd ever done. My mother's hysterical tears, my father's threats, the whispers of the household staff. It all followed me as I packed a small bag and left the only home I'd ever known. James was waiting for me outside his modest apartment, worry etched on his face. When I told him what happened, he tried to talk me out of it. "Charlotte, that's your whole life you're giving up. Your family, your inheritance. I can't let you do that for me." I silenced him with a kiss. "I'm not giving up my life, James. I'm finally starting it." The next few months were a crash course in reality. I moved into James' one-bedroom apartment, got a job as an entry-level business consultant at a small firm, and learned how to live on a budget. It wasn't easy, but for the first time in my life, I felt free. My parents' attempts to bring me to my senses ranged from emotional manipulation to outright threats. They froze my accounts, canceled my credit cards, and even tried to get me fired from my new job. But with each obstacle, James and I grew stronger together. When we decided to get married, we planned a simple ceremony in a local park. No designer dress, no society photographers, just us and a few close friends. The morning of the wedding, I received a text from my mother. "Your father and I will be attending. One last chance to fix this mistake." My heart raced as I showed James the message. He squeezed my hand. "It's your call, love. Whatever you want." I wanted them there. Despite everything, they were still my parents. So when I walked down the makeshift aisle in my simple white dress from a department store, my eyes instantly found them standing at the back. My father looked like he'd swallowed something sour, while my mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Neither moved to join the ceremony. During the reception, a casual barbecue in the park, they made their final play. "Charlotte, darling," my mother's voice dripped with desperation. "It's not too late. Bradley would still take you back. Think about what you're throwing away." My father cut straight to the point. "This is your last chance, young lady. Stay with this person, and you'll never see a penny of your inheritance. Is that what you want? To live in poverty?" I looked at James, who was chatting and laughing with our friends, completely at ease in his rented suit. Then I looked at my parents, trapped in their world of wealth and expectations. "What I want," I said clearly, "is to be happy. James makes me happy. If you can't understand that, then maybe we don't need your money, or you, in our lives." My father's face turned that dangerous shade of purple again. "You're an daughter of mine," he spat, turning on his heel. My mother hesitated for a moment, then hurried after him. As they stormed away, James appeared at my side, wrapping an arm around my waist. "You okay?" I leaned into him, watching my past walk away. Never better. That was 6 months ago. We settled into our life together, working hard, loving harder. James continued at his garage while taking night classes for his master's degree. I threw myself into my consulting work, building my own client base. We were happy, truly happy, even if we had to watch our spending and clip coupons. But there was something James hadn't told me, something that was about to turn my world upside down again. Everything changed on a seemingly ordinary Friday evening. I came home from work early, excited to surprise James with takeout from our favorite Thai place. But our apartment was empty, with a hastily scribbled note on the counter. Working late at the garage. Love you. It wasn't unusual for James to work late, but something felt different. Lately he'd been distracted, taking mysterious phone calls and working odd hours. A knot formed in my stomach as my mind wandered to dark places. Was history repeating itself? Was I about to lose everything again? Unable to sit still, I decided to bring dinner to him at the garage. But when I pulled up, the place was dark. James's beaten-up truck wasn't in its usual spot. My hands trembled as I called his number. Straight to voicemail. Just as panic started to set in, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Mitchell, please come to 1875 Highland Avenue immediately. It's about your husband. My heart stopped. Highland Avenue was in the industrial district, miles from James's garage. With shaking fingers, I typed the address into my GPS and drove through the darkening city, imagining worst-case scenarios. The GPS led me to a massive modern building with sleek glass walls. Security gates opened automatically as I approached, and a uniformed guard directed me to an underground parking garage. Mrs. Mitchell, he nodded respectfully. Take the executive elevator to the top floor. Executive elevator? Top floor? What was going on? The elevator opened into a stunning office suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And there, standing at a glass desk with his back to me, was James, but not the James I knew. Gone were the worn jeans and oil-stained t-shirt. Instead, he wore an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than our monthly rent. When he turned around, his familiar warm smile was tinged with nervousness. Charlie, he said softly, using his special nickname for me, I think it's time I told you everything. Before he could continue, the office door burst open. And there, like a scene from my worst nightmare, stood my father, mother, and Bradley Winchester Eli. What is the meaning of this? My father thundered, his face already turning that familiar shade of purple. Security said Charlotte was headed up here. What are you doing in the CEO's office, you mechanic? James straightened his tie and walked around the desk. Actually, Mr. Hamilton, I am the CEO. James Mitchell, founder and chief executive officer of Mitchell Innovations. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother grabbed a chair for support. Bradley's mouth hung open unattractively, and my father, for the first time in my life, was speechless. But my mother stammered, You're a mechanic. James smiled, taking my hand. I own a chain of auto repair shops, yes. It was my first business, started with a loan from my college professor. But Mitchell Innovations is my main focus. We're a tech company specializing in revolutionary electric vehicle batteries. That's what those late nights at the garage were about. We were finalizing our new prototype. My head was spinning. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to know, James said softly, turning to face me. When we met, I just made the Forbes 30 under 30 list. Every woman I dated was only interested in my money, my status. But you fell in love with me when I was just a mechanic. You gave up everything for me. I had to be sure. Mitchell Innovations, my father muttered, his business mind finally catching up. The company that just revolutionized electric vehicle battery technology. The one every major car manufacturer is fighting to partner with. That's you. James nodded. Our market valuation hit $12 billion last week. Not quite Hamilton Industries territory, but we're getting there. I couldn't help but laugh at my father's expression. All those months of looking down on my poor husband, and James had been building an empire right under their noses. And now, James continued, his voice taking on a sharper edge, I'd like to discuss how you treated your daughter. The woman who, by the way, just became one of the largest shareholders in Mitchell Innovations when she married me. My father's face paled. Hamilton Industries had been trying to break into the electric vehicle market for years. Having a connection to Mitchell Innovations would have been a game changer. Now see here, my father blustered, trying to regain control. We were just looking out for Charlotte's best interests. By disarming her? James's voice was steel wrapped in silk. By trying to get her fired? By making her cry herself to sleep for weeks? Daddy, I finally found my voice. You always taught me that Hamiltons never settle for second best. Well, I didn't. I married the most brilliant, kind, and successful man I've ever known. And I did it without knowing about any of this. Charlotte, sweetheart, my mother stepped forward, arms outstretched. We were wrong. We see that now. Please come home. I looked around the magnificent office, then at James, my wonderful husband who had let me find my own way, support myself, grow stronger. I am home, Mom, but if you want to be part of our lives, you'll have to accept us on our terms. No more manipulation. No more control. My father looked like he was choking on something particularly unpleasant. And what about Hamilton Industries? James smiled. Well, sir, we've actually had several offers from your competitors for exclusive partnerships. But I thought, given the family connection, we might consider a different arrangement, if you're interested in discussing it, as equals. The next hour was surreal. My father and James talked business while my mother fussed over my terrible apartment and insisted we move into a proper home. Bradley had slunk away somewhere, probably to lick his wounds. Later that night, back in our small apartment, I finally asked James the question that had been burning in my mind. Why keep working at the garage? Why live like this when you have billions? James pulled me close. The garage keeps me grounded, reminds me where I started. And this apartment, these months with you, they've been the happiest of my life. We made it ours together, without any silver spoons or trust funds. Tears welled in my eyes. I love you, you sneaky billionaire. He laughed. I love you too, you runaway Harris. Life changed after that night, but not in the ways people might expect. We did move, but into a modest house we chose together. I joined Mitchell Innovations as head of their charitable foundation, using our resources to help other young entrepreneurs. James still spends time at his original garage, teaching mechanical skills to underprivileged youth. My parents, well, they're trying. Mom still makes not-so-subtle hints about grandchildren needing trust funds, but Dad has developed a genuine respect for James. Their weekly business meetings often turn into lengthy discussions about everything from classic cars to philosophy. As for me, I finally understood what James meant about life being too short to live it on paper. Sometimes the best things come disguised as broken down Ferraris and coffee from vending machines. But the best part? Every now and then, when we drive past our old apartment or grab Thai food from our favorite takeout place, James still looks at me the same way he did when he was just a mechanic and I was just a rebel Harris. Because in the end, love doesn't care about bank accounts or business empires. It cares about who you are when everything else is stripped away. And we're simply Charlotte and James, a mechanic and a runaway Harris who found something better than billions. We found each other. I never thought I'd see my parents again after they abandoned me at age 8. That day is burned into my memory forever. Mom and Dad dropping me off at Grandma Rose's house with just a small backpack of clothes, promising they'd be back soon. We just need some time to sort things out, Emma, Mom had said, not quite meeting my eyes. Be good for Grandma. They never came back. The first few months were the hardest. Every day, I'd sit by Grandma's front window after school, watching cars drive by, hoping the next one would be them. Every night, I'd cry myself to sleep, wondering what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't good enough for them to stay. But Grandma Rose was my saving grace. You're perfect just as you are, my sweet girl, she'd tell me, wiping away my tears. Some people aren't ready to be parents, and that's not your fault. But I'm here, and I'll always be here. Grandma Rose wasn't just any grandmother. She was brilliant, sophisticated, and as I later learned, incredibly wealthy, but you'd never know it from how she lived. Our home was modest, she drove an old Toyota, and she still worked as a high school principal because she loved shaping young minds. The only hints of her wealth were her impeccable taste in art and the way she'd sometimes casually mention her investments while reading the financial papers. Under Grandma's care, I flourished. She encouraged my love of science, hired tutors when I struggled with math, and celebrated every achievement, no matter how small. When I won first place in the state science fair at 13, she threw a huge party and invited all my friends. That's my girl, she beamed, hugging me tight. You're going to change the world someday. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Grandma and I against the world. She never spoke badly about my parents, but she made sure I knew their absence wasn't my fault. Sometimes people make choices they can't take back, she'd say wisely. But those choices reflect on them, not on you. I stopped thinking about my parents, stopped hoping they'd return, stopped caring why they left. I had Grandma, and that was enough. She was more than enough. Then came my 18th birthday. Grandma threw me an elegant party at her favorite restaurant, invited all my friends, and gave me a beautiful necklace, a delicate gold chain with a small key pendant. "This is more than just jewelry, Emma," she said mysteriously. "Keep it safe. You'll understand when the time comes." I didn't know then that it would be our last celebration together. 3 months later, Grandma Rose collapsed at school. By the time I reached the hospital, she was gone. Heart attack, the doctor said. Quick and painless. But the pain I felt was anything but quick. It tore through me like a hurricane, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. The funeral was beautiful, just as Grandma would have wanted. Her former students filled the church, sharing stories of how she changed their lives. I sat alone in the front row, clutching the key necklace she'd given me, trying to be strong like she taught me to be. That's when I saw them. My parents walked into the church like they belonged there, like they hadn't abandoned their daughter a decade ago. Mom's hair was grayer, Dad had gained weight, but I'd have known them anywhere. My heart stopped, then started racing. They made their way toward me, faces full of what looked like concern. "Emma, sweetheart," Mom said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away instinctively. "We came as soon as we heard. We're so sorry about your grandmother." Dad nodded solemnly. "We know it's been a long time, but we're here now. You'll come home with us, of course. You're still a minor for a few more months, and we're your legal guardians." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 10 years of silence, and now they wanted to play happy family? "I'm not going anywhere with you," I managed to say, my voice shaking with anger. Grandma Rose was my home. "Now, Emma," Mom said, her voice taking on a stern edge I remembered from childhood. "Don't be difficult. We're your parents. You have no choice in this matter." Actually, a deep voice interrupted, "She has every choice." We turned to see a tall man in an expensive suit walking toward us, carrying a leather briefcase. "I'm James Morrison, Rose Montgomery's attorney, and we need to have a conversation about your grandmother's will." My parents' expressions changed instantly. Mom's eyes lit up with barely concealed interest, while Dad straightened his tie nervously. "Of course," he said smoothly. "We're her only living relatives, after all." Mr. Morrison's face remained impassive. "Let's step into the private room. There are some matters that need to be addressed immediately." As we followed him, I noticed my hand had moved to clutch the key necklace Grandma had given me. Somehow, I knew everything was about to change. Again. I just didn't realize how much. The private room at the church felt too small for the tension building inside it. Mr. Morrison sat across from us at a polished wooden table, methodically arranging papers from his briefcase. My parents flanked me like anxious vultures, trying to appear concerned while their eyes kept darting to the documents. "Before we begin," Mr. Morrison said, adjusting his glasses, "Miss Emma, would you please show me your necklace?" My parents looked confused, but I reached for the key pendant Grandma had given me. Mr. Morrison nodded, a slight smile crossing his face. "Perfect. Now let me read the terms of Rose Montgomery's will." He cleared his throat and began reading. "I, Rose Montgomery, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament." The legal language washed over me until one sentence made my heart stop. "To my beloved granddaughter, Emma Grace Montgomery, I leave my entire estate, including all properties, investments, bank accounts, and business holdings, currently valued at approximately $47 million. The room erupted in chaos. $47 million? Mom shrieked, her face turning red. "That's impossible." Rose was a school principal. Dad slammed his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. We're her only children. You can't tell me she left everything to a teenager." Mr. Morrison remained calm. "There's more. The will specifies that Emma is to be legally emancipated immediately, with a trust established in her name. The key she wears opens a safety deposit box containing additional documents and instructions." My head was spinning. $47 million? Grandma Rose, my modest, Toyota-driving grandmother, had been worth $47 million. "This will is dated just last month," Mom said, her voice dangerous. We'll contest it. Emma's still a minor. We're her legal guardians, and we have rights. Actually, Mr. Morrison interrupted, you surrendered those rights 10 years ago. He pulled out another document. This is a copy of the abandonment charges Rose filed against you both after you left Emma. You never responded to the court summons, so she was granted full legal custody. You haven't been Emma's guardians for a very long time. I watched my parents' faces transform. The fake concern melted away, replaced by naked greed and fury. Emma, sweetie, Mom tried again, her voice honey sweet. You don't understand what you're doing. Let us help you manage this. We're family. Family? The word felt like poison in my mouth. Where was family when you left me? Where was family for 10 years while Grandma Rose raised me? We made a mistake, Dad said quickly. We were young, struggling. But we're here now. We can make it right. Make it right? I stood up, shaking with anger. You're only here because you found out about the money. Did you even care that Grandma died? Did you ever care about me? Their silence was answer enough. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat. There's one more thing. Rose left a letter for you, Emma. He handed me a sealed envelope. She asked that you read it alone. I took the envelope and walked out, leaving my parents protesting behind me. Finding a quiet corner of the church, I opened the letter with trembling hands. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've just learned the truth about our family's wealth. I know it's a shock. I kept it secret for many reasons, but mostly to protect you and let you grow up understanding the value of hard work and kindness. I watched your parents choose money over love many times. They abandoned you because I refused to keep funding their extravagant lifestyle. They chose wealth over their own daughter, and in doing so, gave me the greatest gift, you. The key I gave you opens more than just a safety deposit box. It opens the door to your future. I've made arrangements for everything. The house is yours. Your college fund is secure. The family business awaits when you're ready. But most importantly, remember this. You are loved. Not for your inheritance, but for who you are. The same quiet strength that helped you survive being abandoned has prepared you to handle this responsibility. Don't let your parents manipulate you. They'll try, but you're stronger than they know. You're a Montgomery woman, and we don't break easily. All my love, Grandma Rose. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I finished reading. In death as in life, Grandma Rose was protecting me, guiding me, loving me. I touched the key around my neck, understanding finally flowing through me. When I returned to the private room, my parents were still arguing with Mr. Morrison about contesting a will. They fell silent when I walked in. Emma, Mom started, but I held up my hand. I want you to leave, I said, my voice steady. Both of you. You're not welcome here. Now listen here, Dad began angrily, but Mr. Morrison interrupted. Should I call security? He asked calmly. As the sole heir and property owner, Emma has the right to have you removed. They stared at me, these strangers who shared my blood, and I saw the moment they realized they'd lost. Not just the money, but any chance of manipulating me. This isn't over, Mom hissed as they gathered their things. You'll regret this. I watched them leave, feeling oddly peaceful. What happens now? I asked Mr. Morrison. He smiled. Now we visit that safety deposit box. Your grandmother left quite detailed instructions about the next steps. Shall we? As we left the church, I caught a glimpse of my parents in the parking lot, arguing furiously. They'd lost everything today. Not that they ever really had it. They'd chosen money over love once before, and that choice had finally caught up with them. I touched the key around my neck and smiled. Grandma Rose had given me more than just an inheritance. She'd given me the power to stand on my own, to face whatever came next. And something told me this was just the beginning. The safety deposit box at First National Bank contained exactly what Grandma Rose had promised, and so much more. As Mr. Morrison helped me go through the contents, I discovered just how thoroughly my grandmother had planned everything. Inside were property deeds, stock certificates, and detailed instructions about the family business. Montgomery Investments, a company I'd never even known existed. But what caught my eye was a USB drive labeled Watch Me First. Mr. Morrison pulled out his laptop and Grandma Rose's face appeared on screen. She looked healthy, vibrant. This must have been recorded just before she died. Emma, my darling girl, she began, her familiar smile warming my heart. If you're watching this, then everything has happened as I expected. Your parents showed up at my funeral, didn't they? Trying to claim what was never theirs to begin with. I gasped. Even from beyond, she'd known exactly what would happen. You see, Emma, there's something you need to know about your parents. They didn't just abandon you. They tried to steal everything from me first. Your father, my own son, and your mother attempted to transfer all my assets to their names while I was on a business trip. They thought I was just a naive school principal. They never knew I was the one who built Montgomery Investments from the ground up. She paused, her expression hardening. When I discovered their scheme, I gave them a choice. Stay and live modestly while learning the value of hard work, or leave. They chose to leave. They left you behind thinking I'd come begging them to return. They never understood that by abandoning you, they gave up the greatest treasure of all. Tears streamed down my face as Grandma continued. I watched you grow into an extraordinary young woman. Kind, intelligent, hardworking. Everything they're not. That's why I know you're ready for this responsibility. The video continued with detailed instructions about the company, the properties, and most importantly, the charitable foundation she'd established. The Montgomery Foundation provides scholarships to abandoned children. You'll be its new director. Use our wealth to help others like yourself, Emma. That's our true legacy. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Mr. Morrison introduced me to the company's board of directors, who'd all known and respected Grandma Rose. They welcomed me warmly, ready to guide me as I learned the business. My parents didn't give up easily. They hired lawyers, tried to contest the will, even attempted to prove Grandma Rose was mentally unstable when she wrote it. But she'd been too thorough. Every document was in order, every decision legally sound. Their final attempt came 3 months later. They showed up at the Montgomery Investments office, causing a scene in the lobby. "We're her parents," Mom shouted as security held them back. "She can't keep us out." I met them calmly, dressed in one of Grandma's elegant suits, the key necklace still at my throat. "Actually, I can, and I will. We'll go to the press," Dad threatened. "Tell everyone how you stole our inheritance." I smiled, channeling Grandma Rose's quiet strength. "Go ahead. Tell them how you abandoned your 8-year-old daughter. Tell them how you tried to steal from your own mother. I'm sure the press will love that story." They deflated, finally understanding they'd lost everything, not just the money, but any chance of manipulating me. "Goodbye," I said firmly. "Don't come back." As I watched them leave, I touched the key around my neck, feeling Grandma's presence with me. That evening, I approved the first round of scholarships from the Montgomery Foundation. 20 children from broken homes would get a chance at a better life. Sitting in Grandma's old office, my office now, I looked at her photo on the wall and smiled. She'd given me more than just an inheritance. She'd given me purpose, strength, and the power to help others. The old Toyota still sits in my garage, even though I could afford any car I want. It reminds me of where I came from, of the humble, hard-working woman who taught me that true wealth isn't about money. It's about how you use it to make the world better. Sometimes I wear her old principal's blazer to board meetings. The board members who knew her smile when they see it. They understand. I'm not just Rose Montgomery's heir, I'm her legacy. As for my parents, I heard they moved to another state, telling anyone who will listen about their ungrateful daughter. But their words can't hurt me anymore. I know who I am. I'm Emma Grace Montgomery, and like my grandmother before me, I choose love over money, kindness over greed, and helping others over helping myself. That's what real family does.
Hi, I'm Emma Thompson, and this is the story of how an abandoned farm turned me from the family disappointment into someone my greedy relatives couldn't ignore. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the places others consider worthless. I still remember the day of the will reading like it was yesterday. The mahogany-paneled law office felt suffocating as our family lawyer, Mr. Harrison, adjusted his glasses and began reading my parents' final wishes. The tragic car accident that took both of them had left a $50 million fortune to be divided between my sister Sarah and me. Or so I thought. To our beloved daughter Sarah, Mr. Harrison read, "We leave our investment portfolio, the family mansion, and all liquid assets." Sarah's perfectly lipsticked mouth curved into a triumphant smile. "To Emma," he continued, his voice softening slightly, We leave Grandpa Thompson's old farm property in Montana. The room fell silent. Then Sarah's laughter shattered it. A farm? She sneered, her designer bracelet jingling as she waved dismissively. Oh, this is perfect. Little Emma always did prefer playing in the dirt to attending charity galas. I sat there, stunned. The 200-acre farm had been abandoned for 20 years, ever since Grandpa passed away. Dad had always called it worthless, refusing to even visit it. Now it was my only inheritance. There must be some mistake, my Aunt Patricia interjected, her face pinched with concern that wasn't for me. Richard and Margaret would never leave their daughter with just dirt. Mr. Harrison shook his head. The will is quite clear. The farm, including all structures and contents, belongs to Emma. Sarah stood up, smoothing her channel dress. Well, sis, enjoy your barns and chickens. I've got a portfolio to manage. She paused at the door, her smile cruel. Don't worry, if you need a loan, I'm sure we can work something out. After all, what's family for? I left the law office that day with a single manila envelope containing the farm's deed and keys. 20 years of dust coated everything when I arrived at the property the next day. The main house was a weathered 2-story structure that had seen better days, but it was the massive old barn that caught my attention. Grandpa Thompson had been an odd man, brilliant but eccentric. He'd made his fortune in mining engineering before retiring to this farm, where he spent his last years tinkering in that barn. Dad always said the old man had lost his mind, wasting his genius on a worthless piece of land. The barn door groaned as I pushed it open. Sunlight filtered through gaps in the wooden walls, illuminating decades of cobwebs. Old farming equipment sat rusting in corners. But something felt off about the space. The dimensions didn't quite match the exterior. I remember following Grandpa here as a child, watching him disappear for hours behind a hidden door. Our little secret, he'd whisper, winking. After his death, no one could find that door. Dad searched briefly before declaring it another of his father's delusions. But I remembered. 3 taps on the north wall, then pushed the 4th board from the bottom. My hands trembled as I followed the long-forgotten pattern. Click. A section of wall swung inward, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. My phone's flashlight illuminated the way down to a massive underground room. What I saw inside made my heart stop. Covering the walls were detailed geological surveys, mining charts, and chemical analyses. In the center sat a sophisticated testing lab, preserved under dust covers. But it was the safe in the corner that changed everything. The combination was my birthday. Grandpa never forgot it, even in his final days. Inside, I found a leather-bound journal and a USB drive. The journal's first page read, "To Emma, the only one who ever bothered to listen." As I read through his meticulous notes, tears filled my eyes. Grandpa hadn't lost his mind. He'd made a discovery that would reshape the entire mining industry. The worthless farm sat on top of one of the largest rare earth element deposits in North America. He developed a revolutionary extraction process that was both efficient and environmentally friendly. The USB drive contained detailed patents, already filed, but never activated. Grandpa had been waiting for the right moment, and the right person, to bring his discovery to life. My hands shook as I realized what this meant. The farm wasn't worthless. It was worth billions. But I knew that if my family found out, they'd try to take it from me. Sarah would hire the best lawyers, claim I wasn't competent to handle such a discovery. I needed to move carefully, protect myself before anyone realized what Grandpa had left me. I spent that night in the old house, reading through every page of his journal. In the morning, I made 3 calls to a patent lawyer, a mining engineer, and an investment banker I'd befriended during my own quiet years working in finance, a career my family had dismissed as modest. "Keep this absolutely confidential," I told each of them. "I'm about to show you something that will change everything." Over the next 6 months, I worked in secret. While Sarah posted photos of her luxury vacations and charity galas, I assembled a team of the industry's best minds. The old barn became our command center, its hidden lab modernized with cutting-edge equipment. "These patents are revolutionary," Dr. Chen, our lead engineer, explained during one late-night session. "Your grandfather's extraction process could make rare earth mining both profitable and environmentally sustainable. Do you realize what this means?" I did. With the growing demand for rare earth elements in everything from smartphones to electric vehicles, we were sitting on a gold mine. Literally and figuratively. We'd incorporated Thompson's sustainable resources quietly through a series of shell companies. I used my savings from years of careful investing to fund initial operations. Every step was calculated to keep my family in the dark. Then came Sarah's wedding, a lavish affair at the family mansion. I almost didn't attend, but I knew my absence would raise questions. "Oh, Emma," Sarah exclaimed with false warmth when I arrived. "How's farming going?" Her new husband, a hedge fund manager, snickered. "It's quite educational," I replied mildly. "Actually, I've been meaning to ask, how's the tech sector of your portfolio performing?" Sarah's smile faltered slightly. "Why? Just curious. I heard rare earth element shortages are causing problems for manufacturers. Must be affecting stock prices." "I haven't checked recently," she admitted, clearly uncomfortable with her lack of knowledge. "You should look into it," I suggested, hiding my smile behind a champagne glass. The next morning, while Sarah jetted off to her honeymoon in the Maldives, we broke ground on our first extraction facility. By the time she returned 3 weeks later, Thompson's Sustainable Resources had already secured contracts with 3 major tech manufacturers. The story broke in the Wall Street Journal. Revolutionary mining company disrupts rare earth market. My phone exploded with calls from family members as our company's value soared past $1 billion in its first public trading day. "Emma," Sarah's voice was shrill when she finally reached me. "Why didn't you tell us? We're family." "Are we?" I asked quietly. I thought I was just the girl who got dirt for her inheritance. The next few weeks were chaos. Sarah and Aunt Patricia tried to claim that Grandpa's patents should have been part of the family estate. Their lawyers argued that I had concealed valuable assets. But Grandpa had planned everything perfectly. His will explicitly stated that halal contents of the farm, including any intellectual property developed there, belonged to me. The hidden lab's existence proved he developed everything on the farm property. The final showdown came at an emergency family meeting called by Aunt Patricia. They all sat around the massive dining table in the mansion, the same table where they'd once mocked my modest career choices. "You have to understand," Sarah pleaded, her designer bracelets clinking nervously. "Dad would have wanted the family to share in this." I pulled out Grandpa's journal, opening to a marked page. "Dear Emma," I read aloud, "I'm leaving you this farm because you're the only one who saw its value beyond dollar signs. Your father and sister chase wealth, but you chased knowledge. That's why you'll succeed where they failed." The room fell silent. "You know what the difference is between us, Sarah?" I continued, closing the journal. When you got the family fortune, I congratulated you. When I built something of my own, you tried to take it. We can work something out, she began, but I cut her off. Actually, we can't, but I will give you some free advice. Invest in sustainable technology. Thomson Sustainable Resources is about to announce a major expansion. As I walked out of the mansion, Aunt Patricia called after me. Your parents would be ashamed of how selfish you're being. I turned back one last time. No, they'd be ashamed. They never saw what Grandpa saw in me. But that's their loss. Just like this company is your loss. Today, Thomson Sustainable Resources is valued at $12 million. We're revolutionizing the mining industry while protecting the environment. The old farm has become a state-of-the-art research facility, though I kept the barn exactly as Grandpa left it, secret room and all. Sarah still tries to reconcile occasionally, usually when she needs something. Last month, she called about investing in our latest venture. I had my assistant direct her to our public investor relations line. The family mansion was recently put up for sale. Sarah's risky investments and lavish lifestyle had finally caught up with her. I bought it through a shell company and turned it into a science education center for underprivileged kids. Yesterday, I received an invitation to speak at my old high school's graduation ceremony. The topic? Finding value in unexpected places. I accepted immediately, already planning my speech. After all, sometimes the greatest fortune isn't what you're given, but what you discover when everyone else has stopped looking. As for the old farm, I still live in Grandpa's house, though I've renovated it thoughtfully. Every morning, I walk to the barn and tap that secret panel, remembering the man who saw past appearances to true value, both in the land and in me. They say success is the best revenge, but I've learned it's not about revenge at all. It's about proving that true worth isn't in what you inherit, but in what you create. And sometimes, the most valuable inheritance isn't money, it's the wisdom to see what others miss.
Turning 16 was the day my world shattered, then began to rebuild. The rain lashed against the windows of our suburban house, its relentless rhythm mirroring the storm inside. Victoria, my sister, leaned casually in the corner, her lips curling into a smirk as our parents delivered the devastating news. Rachel, Mom began, her voice devoid of warmth. We've decided it's time for you to leave. She said it as though announcing a minor inconvenience, not exiling her own daughter. You're not like Victoria. You're not college material, and we can't keep wasting resources on a lost cause. Dad remained hidden behind his newspaper, as detached as ever. Meanwhile, Victoria stepped forward, the sharp click of her designer heels punctuating the silence. Don't take it too hard, little sister, she cooed, her fox sympathy unmistakable. Maybe you'll find work as a janitor. That seems more your speed. I stood frozen, my backpack clutched tightly, trying to comprehend their cruelty. The signs had been there all along. Forgotten birthdays, constant comparisons, and praise heaped on Victoria while my efforts went unnoticed. But this was beyond anything I had imagined. Victoria had always been their golden child, their prodigy. While she enjoyed private tutoring and elite dance classes, I scraped by, funding my own school supplies with part-time jobs. Even when I earned a B average despite the odds, the only response was, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" "You have until tonight to pack," Mom added coldly, "and don't take anything we bought. Those are family assets." I laughed bitterly. That won't be an issue. I've bought everything I own since I was 12. Victoria rolled her eyes. Always the victim, Rachel. This is why you'll never amount to anything. That night, packing my few belongings into a battered duffel bag, I vowed to prove them wrong. Not just wrong, I would succeed so spectacularly that their betrayal would haunt them forever. What they didn't know was that I'd spent the past year secretly learning to code. Every dollar I earned working at the cafe went toward online courses. My high school computer science teacher, Mrs. Chen, had seen my potential and quietly mentored me. While Victoria flaunted her Princeton acceptance, I was building a future they couldn't imagine. Instead of wandering the streets as my family probably hoped, I showed up on Mrs. Chen's doorstep. "Rachel," she exclaimed, pulling me into a warm hug. "Come in, you're safe here." The Chens welcomed me like family, their modest home becoming my sanctuary. Mrs. Chen nurtured my talent, while her husband James, who worked in tech recruitment, helped me secure an internship. From there, I poured every ounce of myself into learning, coding, and growing. By 18, I launched my first successful app, an educational platform for underprivileged students. Its impact caught the attention of TechFusion's CEO, Marcus Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, who offered me a role on their development team. By 26, I had become one of TechFusion's youngest executive vice presidents, managing billion-dollar projects. My achievements were public, but my name, legally changed to Rachel Chen, ensured my family remained unaware of my success. Meanwhile, Victoria followed the predictable path: law school, a prestigious firm, and a marriage to Bradley Thompson, a lawyer from old money. Mom and Dad filled their social media with her picture-perfect life, blissfully ignorant of mine. Then, fate intervened. One routine day at work, my assistant buzzed in. "Ms. Chen, the representatives for the merger meeting are here. They're from Thompson, Williams and Associates." My heart skipped a beat. Victoria's firm. "Send them in," I said, adjusting my designer suit and settling into my office chair. The door opened and there she was, Victoria, poised and polished, followed by Bradley and their colleagues. The moment her eyes met mine, her expression faltered. Her Hermes bag slipped from her hand, hitting the floor. "Rachel?" she whispered, stunned. "How?" I smiled coolly. "Welcome to TechFusion. Shall we discuss the merger?" Victoria's composure crumbled as realization dawned. Her nothing of a sister sat in a corner office towering over the city, commanding a power she never dreamed I could hold. "This can't be real," she stammered. You're not supposed to be here." I leaned back, the weight of my triumph speaking louder than words. "Well, Victoria, I'm here. So shall we begin?" Bradley cleared his throat, attempting professionalism. "Ms. Chen, we weren't aware of your connection to Victoria." I let the moment linger, savoring the sweet taste of vindication. "No, I'm sure you weren't aware," I replied, my voice calm and sharp. "Just like you probably didn't realize your firm's future rests entirely on my recommendation regarding this merger." Victoria's face, already pale, turned ghostly white. The weight of my words settled on her like an avalanche. 10 years ago, she had laughed as our parents cast me out. Now the life she built on superiority and control was dangling by a thread, and I held the scissors. The meeting that followed was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. Watching Victoria squirm under the weight of her crumbling facade felt like justice, but this was just the beginning. She had no idea what was coming next, and neither did our parents. Revenge, like success, is best served with careful planning and perfect timing. As Victoria and her team left my office, I saw the cracks forming in her once impenetrable confidence. Everything she thought she knew about herself, her power, her superiority, was unraveling in real time. This was just part one of a decade-long plan. The real blow was yet to come. News of the meeting spread quickly through her circles. Within days, whispers of my identity replaced the reverent mentions of her accomplishments. Rachel Chen, the tech genius, the prodigy on magazine covers, the self-made millionaire, was no longer just a name in the tech world. To Victoria, I was the sister she had dismissed and discarded. My phone buzzed relentlessly with calls and messages from her. 17 missed calls in a single day. Each one was a small victory, a stark reminder of the countless times my family had ignored me. "Ms. Chen," my assistant Sarah's voice came through the intercom. "Your sister is in the lobby again. She's insisting on seeing you." I glanced at my Rolex, a symbol of how far I'd come from that 16-year-old girl in thrifted clothes. "Let her wait," I replied smoothly. "I have more pressing matters to attend to." Those pressing matters included signing the final paperwork for TechFusion's acquisition of Thompson, Williams and Associates. But not through the merger they desperately sought. This was a hostile takeover, a decisive end to their firm as they knew it. An hour later, Victoria burst into my office. Her once flawless appearance was in shambles. Her suit wrinkled, her mascara streaked from tears. Rachel, please, she began, her voice trembling. You have to talk to me. The merger, our firm depends on it. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment stretch. Interesting. Now you need something from me. Quite the change from 10 years ago, isn't it? I was young, she protested weakly, desperation etched into her features. We all were. I didn't understand. Didn't understand what? I interrupted, my tone icy. That treating your own sister like garbage might come back to haunt you. That the person you threw away might actually amount to something. She sank into the chair opposite me, the weight of her guilt pulling her down. What do you want, Rachel? An apology? Money? Just tell me. I laughed, a sound as bitter as it was triumphant. Money? Victoria, I make more in a month than you do in a year. And as for an apology, I rose from my chair and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It's far too late for that. Mom and Dad want to see you, she whispered. They're devastated they didn't know about your success. Devastated they missed out on the money, you mean? I replied, not bothering to mask my disdain. Tell me, did they ever look for me after throwing me out? Did any of you? Her silence was answer enough. Mrs. Chen looked for me. I continued, my voice steady with resolve. She and her husband gave me a home, believed in me, and supported my dreams. They're my real family. Victoria's eyes widened in realization. He changed your name to Chen. I did, I said simply. The moment I turned 18. I wanted nothing to do with a name that brought me nothing but pain. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus Chen, Tech Fusion's CEO. Acquisition approved by the board. Proceed as planned. I turned back to Victoria, my expression unreadable. You'll be getting some interesting news about your firm soon. I suggest you update your resume. Her panic was palpable. What do you mean? I savored the moment before delivering the blow. Tech Fusion isn't merging with Thomson, Williams and Associates, I said, each word deliberate. We're buying it, and our first order of business is restructuring the management team. The blood drained from her face as the implications sank in. You can't do this. Bradley's family, their connections. I laughed outright this time. Bradley's country club connections. Victoria, I have dinner with senators and tech billionaires. His world is nothing compared to mine. As if on cue, her phone buzzed. Bradley's name lit up the screen. The news was spreading like wildfire. This isn't just about me, she pleaded, her voice cracking. Think about the employees, their families. Don't lecture me about caring for others, I said sharply. Unlike our parents, I don't punish innocent people for someone else's mistakes. The employees will be taken care of, but the senior partners who perpetuated that toxic culture, they're out. She stood shakily, her entire world collapsing around her. Mom and Dad will be at my house tonight, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They want to make things right. I paused, considering her words. Seeing them grovel might be amusing, but I had a better idea. Tell them to come to the Capitol tomorrow night at 8. I'll reserve a private room. After she left, I called Mrs. Chen. They took the bait, I said, satisfaction evident in my tone. Are you sure about this, Rachel? She asked gently. Revenge can feel hollow in the end. This isn't just revenge, I assured her. This is justice. And tomorrow, they'll finally understand what that means. The next evening, I sat in the Capitol's most exclusive dining room, the pinnacle of luxury. When my family arrived, their expressions were a mix of awe and discomfort. The daughter they discarded now commanded a world they could only dream of entering. Rachel, Mom began, stepping forward as if to hug me. I didn't move. Please, I said coldly, gesturing to the table. Sit. Dad cleared his throat, clearly out of his depth. We've been doing a lot of thinking, Princess. Don't, I interrupted. You lost the right to call me that the day you threw me out. Mom's eyes filled with tears, perfectly timed as always. We made a mistake, she sobbed. We were so wrong about you. The waiter approached, presenting a bottle of wine worth more than their monthly mortgage payment. I gestured for it to be poured, the sound of the cork popping slicing through the tense air. Yes, you were wrong, I said, my tone calm but unyielding. But that's not why I agreed to this dinner. Victoria shifted in her seat, her confidence unraveling. Rachel, about the firm. The acquisition is final, I replied sharply. And again, that's not why we're here. From my briefcase, I withdrew 3 folders and slid one to each of them. Open them. The silence thickened as they complied. Inside each folder were meticulously documented records, a timeline of their cruelty, from forgotten birthdays to scathing remarks, juxtaposed with financial statements, property deeds, and investment portfolios, all of it theirs. How did you get this? Dad's voice faltered as his eyes darted over the damning contents. While you were busy boasting about Victoria's mediocre achievements, I began leaning back in my chair. I was busy acquiring every debt you owed. Your mortgage, car loans, Victoria's student loans, even Dad's failing business liabilities. I own it all. Every penny you owe is now mine. The shock was palpable. Mom's hands trembled as she clutched the folder, her perfectly manicured nails denting the expensive paper. Now, I said, taking a measured sip of the wine, we're going to discuss terms. The private dining room fell into an uneasy silence. For once, they were at a loss for words. Dad, the man who once dismissed me with a sneer, finally spoke, his voice barely audible. What do you want? What I want, I said, leaning forward, is for you to understand what you threw away 10 years ago. Not just a daughter, but someone who could have been your greatest ally. Mom dabbed at her tears, her designer mascara smudging in streaks. We can be a family again, she whispered, her voice breaking. Please, Rachel, we'll do anything. Anything. I raised an eyebrow, pulling out another set of papers. Then sign this. Victoria, ever the lawyer, grabbed the document first. Her face paled as she read it. This is everything. The house, Dad's business, my trust fund. Precisely, I said coolly. Sign it all over to me and I'll erase your debts. Refuse and tomorrow, I'll foreclose on everything. You can't do this, Dad protested, his voice tinged with desperation. We'll be ruined. Ruined, I echoed, a cold laugh escaping my lips. Let me tell you about ruined. Ruined is being 16 and sleeping in a park because your family threw you out. Ruined is working 3 jobs just to afford a meal. Ruined is watching the sister who mocked you post about her perfect life while you fight to survive. Victoria's anger flared. You're better than this, Rachel. You've already won. You're wealthy, powerful. Why stoop to our level? This isn't about stooping, I said, my voice steady. This is about justice. Consequences. From my phone, I played a recording. Their voices from a decade ago filled the room, cutting through their veneer of remorse. Sneers, dismissive laughter, cruel words predicting my failure. Mom covered her mouth as if to block out the sound of her own venom. I kept this, I said quietly, pausing the recording. Every time I felt like giving up, it reminded me what I was working for. Not just success. This moment. Dad's hands trembled as he picked up the pen and signed the papers. Mom followed, her tears falling freely. Victoria hesitated, her pride warring with her fear, but eventually she signed as well. It's done, I said, collecting the documents. The apartment keys are with the maitre d'. You have until tomorrow to move your essentials. Everything else will be sold. As they stood to leave, I delivered my final blow. 10 years ago, you told me I'd never amount to anything. You were wrong. I became everything you said I couldn't, not because of you, but in spite of you. Victoria paused at the door, her voice fragile. Will we ever see you again? I considered her question. That depends on whether you learn from this. After they left, Mrs. Chen entered the room, her warm smile a balm to my hardened exterior. She hugged me tightly. Are you okay, sweetheart? For the first time in 10 years, I said, my voice lighter. I think I am. The next morning, I watched movers dismantle my old family home. Piece by piece, Victoria's perfect life unraveled. Dad's business was already undergoing restructuring, and Mom's social circle buzzed with the scandal of their fall from grace. But revenge wasn't my ultimate goal. I had something bigger in mind. The following week, I announced the creation of the Chen Foundation for Youth Empowerment. Its mission, to support abandoned and struggling teens, giving them the tools to rewrite their own stories. When I unveiled the foundation headquarters to Mrs. Chen, she cried. This, she said, her voice thick with pride, is your real victory, turning pain into purpose. She was right. The legacy I was building wasn't born from vengeance, but from hope. Each teenager who walked through the foundation's doors would find the support I once needed and received from the Chens. Months later, a letter arrived from Victoria. She wrote about her new life, working as a paralegal, living in a modest apartment, and finally understanding the value of humility. I didn't respond. Instead, I anonymously donated to the legal aid clinic where she worked, ensuring they could continue helping others. Success, I realized, wasn't just about proving my family wrong. It was about proving to myself that resilience could triumph over cruelty. My biological family may have abandoned me, but their rejection had forged me into someone unstoppable, someone who not only survived but thrived and used that success to lift others. In the end, I had gained something far more valuable than revenge. I had found freedom, purpose, and an unshakable peace. The girl they threw away had become the woman they could never be, happy, fulfilled, and whole. I straightened my tie, checking one last time that my presentation materials were perfect. Tonight's family dinner at my sister Rebecca's mansion was more than just a gathering. It was my chance to finally prove myself. After years of working in silence, making strategic investments through my company Griffin Capital, I was ready to pitch my biggest venture yet. I just needed backing from Monarch Bank, where my brother-in-law, Marcus Williams, served as executive vice president. The irony wasn't lost on me. 10 years ago, Marcus had been the one to deny my first business loan, calling my ideas childish fantasies. Now he paraded around at every family function, reminding everyone how he'd saved my sister from her struggling family by marrying her. James, Rebecca greeted me at the door, air-kissing my cheek. My little sister had changed since marrying into the Williams banking dynasty. The warm girl who used to defend me against schoolyard bullies was now more interested in social climbing than family loyalty. "You're looking professional," she said, eyeing my off-the-rack suit with barely concealed disappointment. "Marcus just got back from Milan. Wait till you see his new Italian suits." The dining room was a monument to new money trying to look old. Crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, and what I suspected were reproduction paintings pretending to be originals. Marcus sat at the head of the table like a king holding court. "James, the small business genius graces us with his presence," Marcus called out, drawing laughs from the other guests, all bank executives and their wives. "Still running that little investment firm of yours? What was it called?" "Pigeon Capital." "Griffin Capital," I corrected quietly, setting up my laptop. "And actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. I have a proposal." "Oh God, not another one of your proposals," Marcus groaned dramatically. "Remember his last idea, honey? What was it? Affordable housing developments. As if anyone wants to invest in that." Rebecca giggled nervously. "James, maybe this isn't the right time. The proposal is solid," I pressed on. "A $2 billion development project. Sustainable housing, commercial spaces, community facilities. All we need is financing from Monarch Bank." Marcus nearly choked on his wine. $2 billion? Have you lost your mind?" He started laughing, and others joined in. "You can barely afford that suit, and you want to play with billions." "The numbers work," I insisted, pulling up my presentation. "If you just look." "Enough." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "You want to know why you'll never succeed? Because you don't understand how this world works. Real business isn't about helping people or building communities. It's about power. And you, dear brother-in-law, have none." He stood up, straightening his Italian suit. "Tomorrow morning, I'm presenting to Monarch Bank's board about our latest acquisition. Real business, big business, something you'll never understand. So stick to your small dreams, James. It's all you're good for." As forced laughter filled the room, my phone buzzed. A message from my lawyer. "Documents confirmed. Transfer complete. You now own 51% of Monarch Bank's shares. Board meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Ready to meet your new employees?" I looked up at Marcus, still laughing at his own joke, and allowed myself a small smile. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. I arrived at Monarch Bank's headquarters at 8:45 a.m., wearing the same off-the-rack suit from last night. The security guard did a double take when I walked in. He was used to turning me away from Marcus's floor. "Mr. Griffin." My lawyer, Sarah Chen, waited by the elevators. "Everything's in place. The board members have arrived early, eager to hear about Marcus's big announcement." She smiled. "They don't know there's been a slight change in the agenda. The last decade had been a careful chess game. While Marcus and his banking elite mocked my small investments, I've been quietly building an empire through Griffin Capital. Shell companies, silent partnerships, strategic acquisitions, all leading to this moment. The struggling companies I helped rebuild now formed a network of loyal allies, and their combined resources had allowed me to execute the ultimate takeover. Does anyone suspect? I asked as we rode to the top floor. No, the share acquisitions were completely compartmentalized. Each shell company appeared independent. Even our insider sources say Marcus is confident about today's meeting. He's planning to announce Monarch's takeover of Rivera Banking Group. I smiled. Rivera Banking Group, another company I secretly controlled. The boardroom was impressive. All mahogany and marble, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Marcus stood at the head of the table, that same smug smile from last night plastered on his face. James, what are you doing here? This is a closed board meeting. Actually, Sarah stepped forward, placing a folder on the table. Mr. Griffin has every right to be here. What is this? Marcus grabbed the papers, his face reddening as he read. Ownership documents, I said calmly, taking a seat. As of 8 a.m. this morning, Griffin Capital holds 51% of Monarch Bank's shares. The room erupted in chaos. Board members grabbed copies of the documents, whispering frantically. Marcus's face had gone from red to white. Impossible. We would have known if someone was buying up shares. Would you? I pulled up a presentation on the boardroom screen. A web of companies and acquisitions, all leading back to Griffin Capital. You were too busy looking down on small businesses to notice them uniting under one banner. My banner. This is a trick, Marcus sputtered. The Williams family has controlled this bank for generations. Until you started making risky investments and alienating smaller clients, I countered. Did you think those clients had nowhere else to go? They came to me, Marcus. All those small dreams you mocked. They added up. The board members were nodding now, seeing the full picture. Marcus had been bleeding the bank with his aggressive expansion plans, while I'd been building a sustainable network of loyal customers and solid investments. You can't do this, he whispered. Rebecca. She's your sister. Yes, she is. And maybe now she'll remember what that means. I stood up, straightening my off-the-rack suit. By the way, your Rivera Banking Group takeover announcement? That won't be necessary. They already answer to me. The boardroom doors opened and Rebecca burst in, her face streaked with tears. Marcus, what's happening? Why is our account frozen? About that, I turned to my sister. We need to discuss some irregularities in Marcus's personal trading accounts. Significant irregularities. Marcus collapsed into his chair, his Italian suit suddenly looking like the costume it always was. All those years, he breathed. You were playing us. No, Marcus. I was just doing business, real business, something you never understood. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of audits, meetings, and revelations. What started as a takeover quickly turned into a scandal as our forensic accountants uncovered years of Marcus's financial misconduct. Unauthorized trades, inflated assets, and personal expenses disguised as business costs. The prestigious Williams banking dynasty was built on a foundation of sand. I sat in my new office, formerly Marcus's, reviewing the latest audit reports when Rebecca stormed in. How could you do this to us? She demanded, slamming her hands on my desk. Do you know what people are saying? Our friends won't even take my calls. Your friends? I looked up at my sister. Or your husband's friends? What's the difference? Marcus gave me everything. A perfect life, status, respect. Respect? I stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Let me show you something. I pulled up security footage from last month's board meeting. Watch how your husband treated his employees, the ones who weren't important enough. Rebecca's face fell as she watched Marcus berating a junior analyst, mocking an elderly board member, dismissing valid concerns about predatory lending practices. This was your perfect life? I asked softly, standing silently while he bullied people, just like you stood silently at that dinner when he humiliated me. I didn't know what else to do, she whispered. After he helped pay for Mom's medical bills. I pay for those bills, I interrupted. Through one of my shell companies, Marcus just took the credit. Check your records. Rebecca sank into a chair, her designer handbag sliding to the floor. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? The brother with small dreams. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Griffin? The FBI agents are here about Mr. Williams's trading violations. Rebecca's head snapped up. FBI. James, please. He's still my husband. And you're still my sister. I sat beside her. That's why I've arranged for immunity in exchange for his cooperation. He'll face penalties and fines, but no jail time. The Williams family legacy might be over, but you won't have to see your husband in handcuffs. Why? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Why show mercy after everything you did? I handed her a framed photo I kept in my desk, us as kids, her standing up to bullies who were picking on her nerdy big brother. Because a long time ago, someone taught me that real strength isn't about having power. It's about how you use it. As Rebecca broke down crying, my phone buzzed with a message from the board. Marcus had agreed to resign. His last act would be to sign over his remaining shares. The Williams banking dynasty was officially over, but maybe, just maybe, the Griffin siblings could start healing. 1 year later, the sign on the building read Griffin and Partners Financial Group, a merger of Monarch Bank with my other companies. The marble and mahogany remained, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Junior employees no longer flinched when executives walked by, and the boardroom hosted regular meetings with small business owners and community leaders. I was reviewing a microlending proposal when my assistant announced an unexpected visitor, Marcus. He looked different, humbler in his department store suit, the arrogance gone from his stance. The immunity deal had saved him from prison, but his reputation in banking was finished. Most of his so-called friends had abandoned him the moment his empire crumbled. James, he nodded, standing awkwardly by the door. I came to sign the final paperwork. The divorce settlement. Rebecca told me, I replied, gesturing for him to sit. She said you're moving to Chicago. Small consulting firm. Very small. He attempted a weak smile. Ironic, right? All those dreams I mocked. Turns out they weren't so small after all. No, they weren't. He placed a folder on my desk, the last of his Monarch Bank shares being transferred as part of the divorce settlement. You know what the worst part is? He said quietly, not losing the money or the status. It's realizing that I had a chance to be part of something meaningful. Your vision for ethical banking, community development. I could have been your ally instead of your enemy. Yes, you could have. Rebecca's happier now, he admitted. I see it when we meet with the lawyers. She's found her voice again. Started that children's charity she always talked about. The one you said was a waste of time. He winced. I deserve that. And a lot more. He stood up, straightening his modest tie. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for the dinner or the loans, but for everything. You were the better man, James. You always were. After he left, I walked through the office floors, watching my employees. Our employees, at work. The analyst Marcus had berated was now heading our community outreach program. The elderly board members' concerns about ethical banking had become our core philosophy. Rebecca's charity occupied the entire 10th floor, providing support for underprivileged children. My sister had found her purpose again, separate from designer labels and social climbing. Sometimes during lunch, we'd sit in my office and laugh about old times, slowly rebuilding the bond we'd lost. That evening, as I prepared for a board meeting, my assistant brought in a loan application. Small bakery downtown. Owner says she met you 10 years ago. I smiled, recognizing the name. It was the same woman who'd given me free coffee when I was struggling to build Griffin Capital, believing in my small dreams when everyone else scoffed. On the application, I wrote, approved, with compliments from the small dream believer. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about proving them wrong by creating something they never thought possible. Marcus had been right about one thing. Business was about power. But he never understood that the greatest power lies not in what you can take from others, but in what you can help them build.
The autumn rain fell steadily outside Harrison Manor, the sprawling estate that had been in my family for 3 generations. I sat in my father's study, watching droplets trace patterns down the leaded glass windows while my brothers, James and William, argued over who would get which piece of the family fortune. The summer house in Martha's Vineyard is obviously mine, James declared, running his hand through his expertly styled hair. At 35, he was the eldest and had always assumed he'd inherit the lion's share. William, younger by 2 years, scoffed. You barely visit. I'm there every season with my family. I remained silent, fingers tracing the worn leather of Dad's old chair. At 28, I was the youngest, and in their eyes, the least worthy. Elizabeth Harrison, the daughter who'd chosen to study business instead of law or medicine, who'd moved away to find herself instead of staying to learn the family business. If they only knew. Lizzie, James turned to me with his condescending smile. You can have the cottage in Vermont. It's quaint, perfect for your lifestyle. The cottage in Vermont was the smallest of our family properties, worth maybe a fraction of the main estate. I bit back a smile, remembering the conversation I'd had with Dad 3 years ago in this very room. Mrs. Collins, our family lawyer's assistant, interrupted from the doorway. The video conference is ready. I checked my watch. 2:55 p.m. Right on schedule. The massive screen on the study wall flickered to life, revealing Margaret Collins, our family's lawyer for the past 20 years. Her silver hair was perfectly coiffed, her expression professionally neutral. Good afternoon, Harrison family, she began. As you know, we're here to discuss the distribution of your father's estate following his passing last month. Dad's death had been peaceful. In his sleep, they said. The last time I'd seen him, just a week before, he'd winked at me over dinner. Our secret safe between us. Now, Margaret continued, I understand you've all had a chance to review the preliminary documents I sent last week. James nodded eagerly. Yes, and I have some questions about the distribution percentages. Actually, Margaret interrupted, those documents were merely procedural. Your father left very specific instructions about how this meeting should proceed. William frowned. What do you mean? The will is straightforward. The estate is to be divided between his children. That's partially correct. Margaret shuffled some papers. But first, we need to address the matter of Harrison Global Enterprises. Ah, here it came. I sat up straighter, watching my brother's reactions. What about the company? James demanded. As the eldest, I naturally assume. Harrison Global Enterprises, Margaret cut in, was sold 3 years ago. The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, counting down the moments until their world shattered. Sold? William's voice cracked. That's impossible. To whom? To Phoenix Capital Partners, Margaret replied, then paused deliberately. Specifically to their CEO. James laughed, but it had hysterical edge. This is absurd. Phoenix Capital, I've never even heard of them. Dad would never sell to strangers. You're right, I said quietly, speaking for the first time. He wouldn't. Both brothers turned to stare at me. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder, placing it carefully on Dad's mahogany desk. Phoenix Capital Partners was founded 4 years ago, I explained, my voice steady. It's a private investment firm specializing in corporate restructuring and long-term wealth management, and I'm the CEO. The security cameras Dad had installed years ago would have captured their expressions perfectly. James's face draining of color, William's jaw dropping open. You? William whispered. But you were traveling, starting your own business, you said. I confirmed. Phoenix Capital was my startup. Dad was my first investor. James lunged for the folder, fingers trembling as he flipped through the documents. Sale agreements, transfer papers, board meeting minutes, all signed and notarized, all completely legal. This is a joke, he sputtered. Dad would never. You couldn't possibly. Your sister, Margaret interjected. spent 2 years proving herself to your father. She presented a comprehensive plan to modernize Harrison Global Enterprises and expand into new markets. While you two were fighting over corner offices, Elizabeth was learning every aspect of the business. I remembered those long nights with Dad, poring over financials, discussing strategy, proving I had the vision and capability to take our family legacy forward. He'd seen what my brothers never had, that my time away hadn't been aimless wandering, but careful preparation. The company holdings, Margaret continued, including all subsidiary businesses, real estate portfolios, and investment accounts, were legally transferred to Phoenix Capital Partners in 2020. Your father remained as chairman emeritus until his passing, but operational control has been with Elizabeth for the past 3 years. William collapsed into a chair. But the estate? The properties? I opened my laptop, pulling up the relevant documents. The manor, the summer house, the properties in Europe, they're all owned by Harrison Global Enterprises, which means they belong to you. James finished, his voice hollow. To Phoenix Capital, I corrected. Dad and I restructured everything. More efficient for tax purposes, you see. The rain had stopped outside, weak sunlight breaking through the clouds. Somewhere in the house, the housekeeper was probably preparing afternoon tea, just as she had every day for the past 30 years. But in this room, the world had tilted on its axis. Why? William asked. Why the secrecy? Why not tell us? I met his eyes steadily. Would you have accepted it? Working for your little sister? Taking direction from the one you always saw as the family disappointment? James stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This isn't over. We'll contest it. The will. Actually, Margaret interrupted again. We should discuss the will now, because your father left some very interesting conditions regarding your continued involvement with the company. I sat back, watching my brothers' faces. They had no idea that this was just the beginning. Dad's real surprise was still to come, and I had front row seats to watch it unfold. The security cameras whirred quietly in their corners, recording every moment of this historic family meeting. Dad had insisted on keeping the footage for posterity, he'd said with that familiar twinkle in his eye. I touched the old leather of his chair again, feeling closer to him than ever. Ready when you are, Margaret, I said calmly. Let's tell them about Phase 2. Margaret adjusted her glasses and looked directly at my brothers through the video screen. Phase 2 of your father's plan involves a rather unique arrangement for your continued involvement with Harrison Global Enterprises. James was still standing, his perfectly tailored suit now wrinkled from nervous fidgeting. We don't need arrangements. This is our birthright. Actually, I interjected, pulling up another document on my laptop. You both signed away those rights 3 years ago. What? William leaned forward. We never signed anything. I turned my laptop around. Remember that stack of quarterly reports Dad had you sign? The ones you never bothered to read? Page 394 of each report contained a gradual transfer of your voting rights and company shares to Phoenix Capital. The color drained from their faces as recognition dawned. Dad had always insisted on them signing the quarterly reports, a tradition they dismissed as our father's old-fashioned way of keeping them involved in the business. That's fraud, James sputtered. Margaret cleared her throat. Everything was clearly stated in the documents. Your signatures were witnessed and notarized. Your failure to read what you were signing does not constitute fraud. I remembered Dad's words when we devised the strategy. Your brothers think business is about power lunches and corner offices. Let's see if they've learned to read the fine print. However, Margaret continued, your father did not wish to leave you destitute. He believed in second chances, with conditions. She held up a thick envelope. This document outlines Phase 2 of the succession plan. Each of you has the opportunity to earn back a position in the company, along with a significant ownership stake. William's eyes narrowed. What kind of conditions? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the manor's grounds. The gardeners were trimming the hedges into their precise shapes, a task that required patience, skill, and attention to detail. Everything my brothers had always lacked. Each of you will start at entry-level positions, I explained. William, given your background in finance, you'll begin in our accounts receivable department. James, with your law degree, you'll start in our compliance division. Entry level? James looked like he might faint. I'm a partner at Stevens and Mitchell. We're a partner, Margaret corrected. Your father arranged for your position there to end today. Same with your banking job, William. The grandfather clock struck 4, its deep chimes echoing through the house. Right on cue, both their phones buzzed with emails. Their resignations, effective immediately, drafted months ago by Dad's legal team. This is insane, William whispered. You can't just... I can, I said quietly, and I have. But unlike you two, I'm offering a genuine opportunity. Prove yourselves over the next 2 years, learn the business from the ground up, and you can earn back your places in the company. And if we refuse, James demanded. I smiled. Then you keep your trust funds, the ones that mature when you turn 65. Until then, you'll receive a modest monthly stipend, enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. The security cameras caught James's face, turning an interesting shade of purple. He just bought a new yacht, I recalled. Probably with credit, counting on his inheritance to cover it. There's more, Margaret added. Your father left personal letters for each of you. Elizabeth, would you? I opened Dad's desk drawer and pulled out 2 sealed envelopes. My brothers took them with trembling hands. As they read, I watched their expressions change. Dad had always known exactly what to say to each of us. I'd read my letter the day after he died. Words of pride, trust, and subtle guidance for the challenges ahead. William finished first, sinking deeper into his chair. James crumpled his letter, then smoothed it out again, as if unsure whether to preserve or destroy it. Dad knew, William said softly. About the insider trading. I nodded. And about the embezzlement at your bank. We have all the documentation. James's head snapped up. You're blackmailing us? No, I replied. I'm offering you protection. Accept the positions, work hard, learn the business properly, and those incidents never come to light. Refuse, and well, I shrugged. Phoenix Capital has a strict policy about reporting financial misconduct. The room fell silent except for the faint sound of the gardeners outside. I could almost hear Dad's voice. Power isn't about having the biggest stick, Lizzie. It's about knowing when and how to use it. How long? William asked. How long have you been planning this? I sat back in Dad's chair, feeling its familiar comfort. Remember when I left 6 years ago? You both laughed, said I was running away from responsibility. But I was learning. Harvard Business School, internships at top investment firms, building connections, creating Phoenix Capital from scratch. While we were, James trailed off. While you were coasting on the family name, I finished. Taking shortcuts, breaking laws when it suited you. Margaret cleared her throat. The employment contracts are ready for your review. You'll have 24 hours to decide. After that, the regulatory authorities will receive some very interesting documents. And if we prove ourselves, William asked, after 2 years? I opened another file on my laptop. Then you each receive 20% of the company's shares. I retain controlling interest, but you'll have real power, real responsibility. Earned, not inherited. Why? James's voice was barely a whisper. Why go through all this? Because Dad believed in legacy, I answered. Not just money and property, but values, ethics, real business acumen. He wanted his children to be worthy of the Harrison name, not just entitled to it. I stood up, gathering my things. You have 24 hours. The contracts are with Margaret. I suggest you read them carefully this time. As I walked toward the door, William called out, Where are you going? To the office. Unlike some people, I actually work for a living. I paused at the threshold. Oh, and James, call the yacht broker. You're going to need that money for rent. The security cameras recorded their stunned faces as I left. Outside, the sun had fully emerged, making the wet gardens glisten. I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. Miss Harrison, my assistant answered. How did it go? Just as Dad predicted, I replied. Have the HR team ready tomorrow morning. I have a feeling we'll have 2 new entry-level employees to orient. And if they refuse? I smiled, thinking of the additional documents hidden in Dad's safe. They won't. Phase 3 will make sure of that. The real game was just beginning, and I had all the pieces in place. Dad had taught me well. Sometimes the best power play is the one your opponents never see coming until it's too late. Part 3. The next morning, Harrison Global Enterprises' Modern Glass headquarters buzzed with unusual energy. Word had spread quickly. The Harrison brothers were starting their first day of work, in entry-level positions. I watched from my top-floor office as James's Maserati pulled into the parking garage, followed by William's more modest BMW. They'd shown up. Phase 3 could begin. They're here, my assistant announced through the intercom. Human Resources is ready for their orientation. Had them sent up here first, I replied. Minutes later, my brothers entered, both looking uncomfortable in business casual attire instead of their usual bespoke suits. James had dark circles under his eyes, and William's usual confident stance was notably absent. Sit, I gestured to the chairs facing my desk. The wall of windows behind me offered a spectacular view of Boston's financial district, a reminder of the power they'd lost and could potentially regain. Before you start orientation, I began. There's something else you need to see. I pressed a button, and a hidden panel in the wall slid open, revealing a wall safe. Dad's private safe. William recognized it. But that was in his study. This is a replica, I explained, entering the combination. The original is still at the manor, but its contents were moved here last week. Inside was a single USB drive and another envelope. I'd inserted the drive into my laptop, and my father's face appeared on the large screen mounted on the wall. My children, Dad's recorded image spoke, looking exactly as he had a week before his death. If you're watching this, then everything has proceeded according to plan. James shifted in his seat. William leaned forward. Elizabeth, Dad continued, has proven herself beyond my highest expectations. But this was never just about finding a successor. It was about saving our family. The camera panned to show documents spread across his desk. James, William, I know about everything. The insider trading, the embezzlement, the attempts to undermine your sister when she tried to introduce modern practices to our company. My brothers paled. There was more they hadn't told me clearly. But I also remember you as children. William, who cried when his pet fish died and insisted on a proper funeral. James, who gave his allowance to a homeless man and tried to hide it from us. You weren't always driven by greed and entitlement. Dad's eyes seemed to stare directly at them through the screen. That's why I agreed to Elizabeth's plan. Not just to protect our company, but to save you both. Your plan? William turned to me. I nodded. Phase 3 was my idea. Dad modified it, but the core concept was mine. On screen, Dad held up a familiar document. This is the real inheritance document. Elizabeth doesn't just control the company. She controls your futures. But not as a punishment, as an opportunity. He smiled sadly. Your sister understands something you both forgot. True wealth isn't in bank accounts or property deeds. It's in the relationships we build, the trust we earn, and the legacy we leave. James wiped his eyes quickly. William stared at his hands. So here's the final twist, Dad continued. Elizabeth has full discretion over your employment conditions. She can modify them, accelerate them, or terminate them. But there's one condition even she can't change. I opened the envelope from the safe and spread out the contents. Family dinner, I said quietly. Every Sunday. Mandatory attendance. No business talk allowed. Because, Dad's recording continued, you need to remember how to be a family again. Elizabeth will lead the company, but she needs her brothers. Not as employees, but as family. The screen went dark. In the silence that followed, I could hear the faint hum of the office air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic below. There's more, I said, pulling out final documents. If you successfully complete 1 year, not 2, of genuine effort in your positions, you'll each receive 15% of company shares. Another 10% will be held in trust for your children. Our children? William looked confused. Your future children, I clarified. Dad believed in planning ahead, way ahead. James stood up and walked to the window, his reflection ghost-like against the bright morning sky. All this, it was never about punishing us, was it? No, I replied. It was about saving you, saving us, as a family. William joined his brother at the window. We were horrible to you, Lizzie. All those years. You were, I agreed. But you're still my brothers. And Dad believed you could change. And you. James turned. Do you believe we can change? I stood up, joining them at the window. Below, the city was fully awake now. People rushing to their offices, living their lives, pursuing their dreams. I believe, I said carefully, that this company needs more than just my vision. It needs your legal expertise, James, properly applied this time. And your financial acumen, William, used for growth, not personal gain. But first, I continued, we need to rebuild trust, starting with Sunday dinner. Where? William asked. The Manor? I smiled. My place. I make a mean lasagna. And I have pictures from my Harvard graduation that you never attended, plus evidence of all your childhood embarrassments that Dad secretly saved. James actually laughed, a real laugh, not his usual condescending chuckle. You're going to hold those over us forever, aren't you? Of course. I am a Harrison, after all. The next few months weren't easy. James struggled with taking orders from younger colleagues. William had to relearn basic accounting practices he'd skipped over in his rush to the top. But slowly, things began to change. Sunday dinners became a genuine time for reconnection. Between mouthfuls of lasagna and embarrassing childhood stories, we rediscovered what it meant to be siblings, not just business rivals. 6 months in, I called them both to my office again. They entered cautiously, but with more confidence than that first day. "The board is impressed with your progress," I began, "especially the ethics committee. Is this about the shares?" William asked. "It hasn't been a year yet." "No," I smiled. "This is about phase 4. "There's a phase 4? James groaned. "Dad's reaching from beyond the grave again." I laughed. "Actually, phase 4 is mine. How would you both feel about joining me in a new venture? Something separate from Harrison Global, but complementary. A chance to build something together as equals." Their faces showed surprise, then interest. We spent the next 3 hours discussing possibilities, arguing good-naturedly about business models and market strategies. It felt right. 1 year to the day after that first inheritance meeting, we gathered in Dad's old study. The security cameras were still there, silent witnesses to our family's transformation. "I have something to show you," I said, pulling up the footage from that dramatic first meeting. We watched our past selves, barely recognizing the entitled, angry men and the defensive, prepared woman we'd been. "We were such idiots," William mused. "Were?" James quipped, earning a playful punch from our brother. I looked at them, really looked at them. James had lost the arrogant edge to his smile. William's eyes had regained the kindness I remembered from our childhood, and I had gained something too, brothers I could trust, not just with business, but with my life. "Dad would be proud," I said softly, "of all of us." The security cameras whirred quietly, recording this moment too. But we didn't need recordings anymore to remember who we were or what we meant to each other. We were Harrisons, not just in name or inheritance, but in spirit. And that, as Dad had known all along, was worth more than any estate.